Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. Live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
So how were the roads last night getting home? You said that it wasn't that bad.
No, not too bad.
And then how were the roads getting to work today?
Much better. Much
Good.
better today. Yeah, thank you very much.
Good. I was a little nervous about you yesterday, making it in, making it out, but apparently you are as good as they come in the snow. Now, I want to start with this. I enjoyed yesterday's 2 football games, though I found myself incredibly bored by the Steelers and Bills, even though I will tell you, I didn't bet on the game, but I had picked it in 6-pack picks. I had picked it for the Steelers. And so I wanted Buffalo to win because I wanted a good AFC wildcard play or a divisional round, and I really wanted to see the Texans at the Ravens. So I was really rooting for Buffalo, but I really wanted the Steelers to cover the 10. And then I forget when the referee screwed me on the 4th down throw, I think, with Kenny Pickett. But I thought there was Mason Rudolph, but I thought there was a chance. The second game, I mean, what a freaking train wreck the Eagles are. So I want to start with this. While it is enjoyable to watch other people's misery, which is concerned that we have to wait and see what happens with those jobs. So right now, what the NFL has done is the NFL, the new rules in the league, basically keep everybody from being able to hire their coach until after the divisional round of the playoffs. Except for the Patriots, who had it written into Gerard Mayo's contract. That's a different discussion. So everybody that has an open job can get to work on their open job, but they can't really do anything about it. You have to interview 2 external minority candidates per the Rooney Rule, and they have to be in person. So you can do a Zoom interview right now, but that doesn't count. It has to be in person. The Titans have to fly in 2 external minority candidates and interview them in order to hire whomever it is that they want to hire. So right now, what we're looking at in this coaching cycle is kind of political, right? Which is when they bring a vote to the floor, they know how the vote is going to go. Like they know, do we have the votes in order to proceed with the bill, or do we not have the votes to be able to proceed with the bill? They know before they do it. In fact, they do this for 1 of 2 reasons. 1 is because they know they have the votes and they'll get it passed. And 2 is because they know they don't have the votes, but they want to put everybody on record to say, okay, you're voting against this bill. Now everybody knows, your constituents know, that's why they do it. It's never really a surprise when they go up there to vote on a bill. And that's where we are right now. And I'm not saying all these interviews that are coming out are pointless as far as we have conducted a virtual meeting with Johnny Joe for our head coaching position. But it kind of is. All the work right now is being done behind the scenes. Quite frankly, when you fire a coach in the NFL, chances are you know who you're going to hire. Some places just fire coaches because we can't do this coach anymore, like Washington and Ron Rivera. But for the most part, teams fire coaches because, hey, we know we're going to be able to go get Jim Harbaugh. We know we're going to be able to go get Bill Belichick. We know we're going to be able to. But right now, there are 3 jobs, Dallas, Pittsburgh, and Philadelphia, that I think the entire league is waiting on. And I don't think they know exactly what they're going to do. Now is when they decide these things. Jay Glazer came out and said that Mike Tomlin may take some time off. He may step away in Pittsburgh. But do they know that yet? So this is where we are. We're all waiting for this white smoke to emerge from Dallas, Philadelphia, and Pittsburgh. I don't care about the big names on the coaching search block as far as Jim Harbaugh, Pete Carroll, Bill Belichick, and obviously Mike Vrabel, who the Titans are not going to hire. I don't care about those names because I don't see the Titans hiring any of them. I don't want the Titans to hire any of them. I want the Titans to hire Bobby Slowick. That's who I want them to hire. And I think if everything goes to plan, Ben Johnson will go somewhere, and he'll get paid a boatload of money. Harbaugh will go to the Chargers. Bill will go to the Falcons. Carolina's a disaster. They'll have to hire somebody, but it'll be like pulling teeth. And then Bobby Slowick will be available, and you'll be available, and you will walk away with Bobby Slowick as your coach. The betting markets are totally relying on that. Bobby Slowick is the overwhelming favorite to be the next head coach of the Tennessee Titans, which, again, I am rooting for. But what about Dallas, Philadelphia, and Pittsburgh? You see, somebody asked me, and we'll get to this list, I guess, at some point today, but somebody asked me, where would you rank the Titans' job in terms of openings in the NFL? And there are so many potential openings with Dallas, Philly, and Pittsburgh that are better than the Titans that make me hesitate a little bit. I certainly think the Titans' job is better than the Raiders, where Aiden O'Connell's the quarterback. I certainly think it is a better job than the Patriots. Now, they've already hired a coach, but I think it's a better job than the Patriots. I think it is a much better job than Carolina. Yeah, the Titans owner, we'll see. But Carolina's owner, we know. So if that's who you're competing with for Bobby Slowick, I feel pretty good about it. You're competing with the Pittsburgh Steelers, who never fire a coach and are the model for NFL stability from the owner on down. You're in trouble. And I think everybody's kind of waiting this. It's one of those things where I feel internally like the stars are going to align, the Titans are going to hire Bobby Slowick, and Bobby Slowick is going to be the next Shanahan genius guru, and on you go with Will Levis. And I feel comfortable. I wouldn't say confident, but I feel comfortable with that proposition going forward. But right now, in this dead period we're in this everybody around the league working behind the scenes trying to figure out, is Dallas going to come open? Is Philadelphia going to become open? Good jobs, big cities, strong fan bases, rich owners. Are these jobs going to become open? Because if these jobs do become open, now all of a sudden, what does that mean for the pecking order of available coaches? And what does that mean for, again, the one guy I want, Bobby Slowick? If they open the gates today and you could offer Bobby Slowick the job, I would. And if he took it, and again, there's a big asterisk by me saying all of this, which is the interview process does matter. If I interviewed Bobby Slowick and he came off as a booger-eating loser, I'm not sure I could take him. But assuming that they all interview well, you hire Bobby Slowick today, be great. Bobby's looking at $10 million. He's looking at coaching, being a head coach in the NFL. Like, okay, yep, sold. But right now, why would Bobby Slowick commit to that? I mean, who knows? The Steelers could come offering him a job. You're not going to take the Tennessee Titans if you're being offered the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so I'm nervous. This is a lot like the NFL draft, where, again, a GM knows who he wants to pick, has the 8th, 10th, 13th pick in the draft, and is sitting there and is waiting and counting down the picks and looking at the board and thinking in his head and debating whether or not to trade up and just hoping that their player gets to them. It's a tackle, for instance. And you look at the 5 teams in front of you, and you don't think they're going to go tackle. They all have 2 tackles each. That's how I feel right now. Chargers are going Harbaugh. Raiders are going to stick with Pierce. Falcons are going to hire Belichick. But then all of a sudden, there's always in the back of your mind the ability of one of those other teams to trade up in front of you. And so there you are in that draft room, sitting on pins and needles, just kind of waiting for it to shake out, for it to get to your turn so you can pick up your phone, call your draft guys at the draft, and run that card right to Roger Goodell. Floyd told me that before he drafted Javon Kearse, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had to pick 1 pick ahead of them. And he saw the board, and he didn't want to wait any longer. And so he called Rich McKay, who was running the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he offered a 4th-round draft choice. I believe Javon was the 14th or 15th pick. He called the Buccaneers and offered to move up 1 spot. And Rich McKay told Floyd, nah, we're going to go with the guy that we really, really like. There's a guy on our board who we want to take. We're going to take him. Thanks, but no thanks. Floyd said, okay, just out of curiosity, who is the guy that you want to take? And they said, Booger McFarland. And he said he hung up that phone so fast because he knew he got Javon Curse. That's how I feel about Bobby Slowick. That's the one guy who I feel like checks all of the boxes that I want in the Titans coach. I can live with some of the other guys. I can live with Ben Johnson, who I don't think the Titans are going to be able to get. I can live with Brian Callahan, who you may be able to get, I don't know. But Slowick is the guy that I want. And again, in the Shanahan system, the Shanahan scheme, the Shanahan offense, the Shanahan winning that they've had recently in the NFL, they are basically batting 1,000. And I am just hoping and praying and just, it's like I'm looking at Dallas and I think Mike McCarthy, who knows? But I'm thinking, please don't fire Mike McCarthy. Because if you fire Mike McCarthy, a better job comes on the market. And maybe Ben Johnson wants to go to the Cowboys. And now Washington, who might be circling Ben Johnson, is now circling Bobby Slowick. And I don't want that. Philadelphia, starting quarterback in place. They've got 2 receivers. They've got a tight end. They've got a stable general manager, a rich owner. That's a better job than the Titans. I don't want that job to come open. How many guys that are these offensive gurus think, hey, you give me Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, and I'll light up the scoreboard too. It worries me. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. So this is going to be a long week. If you're somebody like me and you just want the Titans to hire Bobby Slowick, it's going to be a long week. A very, very long week. But again, just like with Congress, everybody's doing all that work behind the scenes, and we don't even know what's being discussed. We don't even know, for instance, Rand Carthon absolutely has Bobby Slowick's phone number in his phone. I'm sure Bobby has spent a lot of time getting ready for the divisional round playoff game against the Ravens. But if Rand really wanted to talk to Bobby Slowick, I bet he could. And we don't know if he has. All we know are, we have completed our Zoom interview with offensive coordinator Jared Stillman of the whatever. That's all we know. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. So now we got 3 openings, perhaps, that we got to keep an eye on. Dallas, Philly, Pittsburgh. And I got a couple coordinator takeaways from the playoffs yesterday as well. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025. If you want to weigh in on our program, again, that's 615-737-1025. And we're brought to you by Jarrett Company's Fire and Commercial Plumbing HVAC Division, 615-515-1270, JarrettCompaniesInc.com. Hey, be sure to tune in for basketball. That's right. MTSU basketball this Thursday, 93.3 Classic Hits, where MTSU will be on the road taking on UTEP, pregame 7:30, tip-off at 8 o'clock. And coverage is also available on the 93.3 Classic app and at 93.3ClassicHits.com.
Here's the thing about the Sirianni thing, I am not one for firing coaches. I don't think just because you fire one, you're going to find one better. It depends on who you're going to hire, all those kinds of things. But I will say this: if I had to compare the debacle in Philly versus the debacle in Dallas, I would say the one in Philly was much worse than the one in Dallas because of the cliff they fell off after being 10-1 to going to losing 6 of 7 and getting boat raced in the playoffs. The Cowboys, they had an embarrassing game. I get it, but it's a game as opposed to an embarrassing half of a season. And so if you're Philly and the chatter coming out of Philly has been on Sirianni, I would say that would be the one.
Jeff Saturday this morning on ESPN. Let me say this. I completely disagree. Completely disagree with the sentiment that the collapse in Philly was worse than the collapse in Dallas. The collapse in Philly, clearly something's wrong. Whether it's the locker room and A.J. Brown or whether it's, the old guys they got on defense or whatever it may be, or the coaching that they had on defense this year, it could be any number of things. But the truth is they probably know what that one thing is, and they'll find a way to probably plug that hole. Dallas, I took that game. I'm telling you, I think that Vanderbilt could have beaten Dallas on Sunday. It's like the thing about Dallas is that between McCarthy and Dak, and I'm going to throw Dan Quinn into this, those guys just seem to choke all the time. So right now, the NFL is waiting to see what's going to happen in Dallas, Philly, and Pittsburgh with Tomlin, who was asked a question about his job, and he walked off yesterday. Now, let me say this. Ahead of all these Jerry Jones has apparently canceled his weekly radio call-in that he does on that flagship station, or maybe it's not even the flagship station. I don't know. The station he does in Dallas, Jerry has canceled his appearance this week, which let me just say this. As a host, and I have no idea how much money they're paying Jerry, but I'm sure it's a lot. As a host, I'd be freaking pissed if the one time everybody wants to hear exactly what Jerry is thinking right now, Jerry's like, I'm good. I'm not going to do the radio interview this week. Who cares after you beat Washington? Jerry, what'd you think? I love that game on Sunday. Well, no duh. But right now we want to know. So let me say this. I think McCarthy should be fired in Dallas. I think Sirianni should get the benefit of the doubt in Philadelphia. And Tomlin and the Steelers, they got some serious relationshiping to figure out. Let's start with Sirianni. I'm going to give Sirianni the benefit of the doubt because while this season and their collapse was horrific, and I'm watching the game last night, and I'm just thinking about how this time last year, the Eagles' defense was so badass. Like, we talk about how A.J. Brown annihilated the Titans when they went on the road to Philadelphia last year, but that defense did a number on the Titans and hurt about half the team because they were just so big, so strong, so physical, so everything. And so, Sirianni's 3 for 3 on playoff appearances. They were in the Super Bowl last year. My guess is he probably needs to fire both coordinators and start over. But as far as last night's individual game, I think I'm honestly more disappointed with Jalen Hurts maybe than I am with Sirianni. And I just think that Sirianni's accomplished enough that they need to give it another run. He, again, outside looking in, I don't cover that team. I don't know how much of a bozo he is behind the scenes, but I think Sirianni probably deserves a second chance. McCarthy's got to go in Dallas. He's got to go. McCarthy's got to go. That was an epic choke job, and that is the kind of choke job that lies at the feet of the head coach. I'm happy for Jordan Love and Matt LaFleur, and it does look like they got some decent receivers, but San Francisco's going to kill them this week, and it's because they're a fringe playoff team. But a fringe playoff team that's got nothing to lose, going on the road, taking on an epic choker, that is a team, and we should have seen this coming and we didn't, but that is a team that is ripe for picking. Now, I don't know what got into Dak and CeeDee Lamb, because it looked like there were issues there. But McCarthy's got to go. Now, Tomlin and the Steelers, although I will say this, I'm not impressed with McCarthy, but they did have a good season, in terms of developing some of their players and the season Dak had, but that's the season. And nobody expects the Cowboys to have bad seasons. People are tired of the Cowboys that are Cowboy fans. People are tired of the Cowboys having bad postseasons. Now, Tomlin and the Steelers. First of all, Tomlin walking off the stage yesterday when asked about his contract, that was not an accident. Okay? Any coach that has any question about their job gets asked by the media about that job at their end of the season, and I'm not saying end of the season press conference, but their press conference right after their last game, because that coach might get fired. Well, every coach except for the coach here, who, despite the fact that all the Sunday shows were talking about Vrabel being on the hot seat, nobody here asked him after the Jags game about being fired, and, well, there you go. But every coach gets asked. Sirianni got asked about it yesterday, and he talked about, I'm not thinking about that. I hurt for the guys. I'm not. Every coach, you can BS your way out of that anytime you want. And Tomlin didn't. Again, Tomlin's not a rookie. Tomlin knows how to work the press. Tomlin knows how to work the media. Tomlin just walked right off. Everybody knows what happened. Everybody's talking about what happened. Tomlin wants that to be the case. Now, again, I think when it comes to Tomlin, they need to sort out their issues and decide, do we want to keep this relationship going or do we need to break up? And that is Tomlin and the Rooneys sitting down and deciding it. And their relationship is so vast that I really have no opinion one way or another. I think Tomlin is a really good coach. I think Tomlin could go somewhere else and win. I think Tomlin should be in demand if he were to leave the Steelers. And I think the Steelers also look at their team and say, every year we're a fringe playoff team that maybe has a shot, and yet we're not going to win the Super Bowl right now. And it's not like we're a couple fixes away. So that one is complicated. Now, there are a couple of coordinator nuggets as well that I took away from yesterday. The Titans have requested permission to interview Brian Johnson, the offensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles. Let me start with this. No, thank you. And I don't want to get too carried away with, how a guy coordinates in one game because Kyle Shanahan had that, whatever it may be. But no, thank you. I mean, Aikman said on the TV broadcast yesterday, he's like, I've never recognized this offensive concept they're running with these receivers. I've never seen this before. And I do think Troy Aikman's seen a lot of football. The second is Dave Canales, the offensive coordinator in Tampa. Nobody is talking about him, but if the Titans end up getting dumped on with Bobby Slowick and Ben Johnson and Canales last year, quarterback coach at Geno Smith. Canales this year, offensive coordinator Baker Mayfield. Those are two quarterback reclamation projects in back-to-back years. And that offense was a humming last night. So I'm not saying he should be a top candidate, but let's not leave Dave Canales out of this. But Brian Johnson, again, he's on the Titans interview list. No thank you after last night. 615-737-1025. We'll get to your phone. 615-737-1025. And then with these coordinators, what do we make of their performances over Wild Card Weekend? We'll do that next. Stillman and Company here on our program. Speaking of performance, it is cold as heck outside. You need to make sure your windows are performing well, and that's why I want to tell you about Window Nation. Online at windownation.com. Do this. Go up to your window, as it is going to be freezing cold the next couple of days. And honestly, I was looking at my phone, and I'm trying to figure out, when is it going to not be cold? And quite frankly, we may be in Siberia here for a second. So what you want to do is just feel your window. And if it's ice cold like it is outside, that means a draft is going to be coming into your home. That means that you're going to have to turn up the heat in order to pump that baby out of there. And that is going to cost you on your energy bills. So give Window Nation a call. Window Nation's got a great offer to replace these old windows that are easier and more affordable than you think. And their experts will be the ones to walk you through it. No interest for 5 years and 50% off all window styles. So if you're like me and you're not a huge window expert, but you know that your windows need replacing and you want to add the value to your home and you want to keep that cold air out, Window Nation is your place to go. 866-90Nation, windownation.com. And so again, while it's freezing cold, test out your windows, see what you think. And if you don't like it, give Window Nation a call. Again, no interest for 5 years and 50% off all window styles. 866-90Nation, windownation.com.
Who's the most to blame for that collapse last night?
Oh, easily Dan Quinn. Easily. The defense was so alarmingly inept, so lost, so discombobulated, so out of sync, and ultimately so punked. There is no more flagrant culprit for yesterday's demise than Dan Quinn. I think it's so bad that I don't think that Dan Quinn deserves to be a head coach. I think that he should be immediately omitted from head coaching consideration for the Seattle Seahawks. And I know that he was an exceptional defensive coordinator in Seattle. And he's been a damn good coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys. But when you're that head coach, you got to remember, he was the head coach in Atlanta when you had a 28-3 lead against the New England Patriots, and you ended up losing that game. We point to Kyle Shanahan because you kept throwing the football instead of running the football and should have milked the clock more. But there was an authoritative figure that he had available there, which was Dan Quinn. Where the hell were you?
That was Stephen A. talking about, hey, Dan Quinn, take him out of consideration for a head coaching job after that horrendous Dallas defensive performance the other night. And I understand the idea. But I was really thinking about this today. Are we really going to judge these coordinators? And this is a question. This is not me telling you don't do this or do this or any. I'm not telling you. This is just me. Is it really fair to judge a coordinator off of one performance in the playoffs? Like Kyle Shanahan, and Stephen A. brought it up there, absolutely fumbled that Super Bowl when he was the offensive coordinator of the Atlanta Falcons. Do you think San Francisco regrets its decision to hire Kyle Shanahan? I've seen Andy Reid ruin playoff games with the clock. They were in the Super Bowl, and they were down by 2 scores with 5 minutes to go, Philadelphia, and they were not hurrying up to the line of scrimmage. But that's the head coach. That's one thing. When it's a coordinator, it's a one game. We watch it, we say, oh my God, no on this guy, Dan Quinn. Everything Dan Quinn's done, throw it away because of that one game. But then on the other side, like, it's a pretty important game. Like, that's why we do this. As Bill Parcells used to say, that's why you lift all them weights, is for these games. And if you go out and you drop a stinker in those big games, I mean, that's what defines kind of careers and legacies and everything else. So on one hand, I've got Bobby Slowick, who was freaking fabulous in his playoff debut. I've got Dave Canales, who I thought just lit it up last night with Baker Mayfield. And then on the other hand, I got, Dan Quinn, who the Titans are interested in, reportedly. Brian Johnson, the offensive coordinator of the Eagles, who the Titans are interested in, reportedly. I mean, this is, I don't want to sit here and say like, oh no, this is some serious stuff. But like, again, when it comes to trying to decide, I mean, this is a massive decision. You're going to let one game, you're going to let that blow it? I don't know where to go. Phone lines, by the way, are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, though I am not deterred by how Bobby Slowick called that game the other night for the Texans. Texter into the and I am incredibly excited to watch him go up against the Ravens defense and see what they do. Texter says, explain, Jared, why Bobby Slowick over Ben Johnson. C.J. Stroud could make almost any offensive coordinator look good. Ben Johnson has made Jared Goff look good. Therefore, Ben Johnson is my choice. Couple of things here. Number one, Ben Johnson is not from the tree. Now, Ben Johnson runs the West Coast offense with Jared Goff because, again, if you're going to be coaching Sean McVay's quarterback, then you need to run Sean McVay's offense. It's very smart. But he didn't coach under McVay. He didn't coach under Shanahan. He didn't coach under those guys. Secondly, when it comes to Ben Johnson, I think that there's going to be a high demand for Ben Johnson, and quite frankly, I'm not sure Ben Johnson would want the Titans. And third, this idea that C.J. Stroud could make any offensive coordinator look good doesn't make any sense to me. And I heard this on Twitter all day Saturday about Bobby Slowick's got C.J. Stroud. Of course Bobby Slowick's good. Guys, this time last year, C.J. Stroud was not the consensus top quarterback in the draft. When they drafted C.J. Stroud, was not the consensus pick in the draft. So I've got Bryce Young's college career and C.J. Stroud's college career in both of my hands. Bryce Young had a better college career. I don't think that is questionable at all. Now, C.J. Stroud, I would have gone, I would have gone with Anthony Richardson because I love the talent of Anthony Richardson. We don't know what Anthony Richardson will or won't be. We'll see with Shane Steichen, and I am still scared to death of that. But on one hand, most people, I think, would have gone Young over Stroud, including me. Then all of a sudden they get in the NFL. C.J. Stroud has great coaching. C.J. Stroud has receivers. C.J. Stroud has a tight end. C.J. Stroud has an offensive line. Bryce Young doesn't have any of that. So do we really think it's Bryce Young is a bum, C.J. Stroud is the next Michael Jordan? Or do we think Bryce went somewhere that was ill-prepared, to develop a young quarterback, and CJ went to a great place for a young quarterback. Because Brock Purdy is doing a lot of good things with the 49ers, and he's in a great situation as well. So I don't look at CJ Stroud and how impressive his performances are, and I don't hold that against Bobby Slowick. I think that's a positive for Bobby Slowick. In fact, to me, it's killing two birds with one stone. You've got a young quarterback who, again, we think is pretty talented and's got his decision-making issues and things like that. But you got that young quarterback. You're going to be taking away the guy that is managing their young quarterback, and he is all of a sudden going to coach your young quarterback. And if you don't think the coordinator matters, then you didn't listen to Troy Aikman last night on the broadcast talk about how much the Eagles are missing Shane Steichen. So I'll tell you right now, the idea that, Ben Johnson made Jared Goff look good, so he must be a genius. Arthur Smith made Ryan Tannehill look good. Ryan Tannehill ran the number 2 offense in the NFL his last year with Arthur Smith. A.J. Brown's good. Derrick Henry's good. But they did that with David Quessenberry at left tackle. Corey Davis and Jonnu Smith had career years. The coach was absolutely the reason why. And when the coach left, and when Corey Davis didn't have the coach, and when Jonnu Smith didn't have the coach, So, I mean, this idea, Ben Johnson, he's so great. Maybe. But one, he's going to be in demand, and I don't want to, look, he's probably going to want to take a better job. But also, if it were a blind, just, you can have whoever, I'm taking Slowick because I believe in the tree. And he's the next guy underneath Kyle Shanahan on the tree. Chip from Mount Juliet says, is Nick Sirianni the next Doug Peterson? I mean, I don't really know, other than the fact that they coached with the Eagles and they had coached together, I believe, or at least Sirianni was under Reich, and they're kind of, again, talking about trees, under the same tree. I don't know Sirianni enough to know if he's a bozo or not. I know this. I know the first year that Sirianni took the job, he was hired to work with Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz was mad at the organization. They hired a coach to work with Carson Wentz specifically. Wentz didn't want to do it. So Wentz forced his way out, got the trade to Indianapolis. They had already hired Sirianni. Jalen Hurts was a backup. A lot of people thought Jalen Hurts was a backup. In fact, they went into that year, again, a rebuilding year, saying, we'll see with Jalen Hurts. Then all of a sudden, they try to get Russell Wilson after they made the playoffs with Jalen Hurts. They didn't get him. Then Jalen Hurts becomes what they thought was their franchise quarterback. And last year, Hurts looked the part. And now Hurts is regressing a little bit. And I think some of that is the coordinator. But you have to give Sirianni credit for what he's accomplished. Whereas with Peterson at the end there in Philadelphia, I mean, it had kind of played out the string. They tied Cincinnati at home, which, again, this team lost to Arizona at home. But, they were, at the last game of the year, they benched Jalen Hurts and put Nate Sudfeld in because they needed to see what he had when really they were tanking for draft position. And I just think that at that point with Peterson, the relationship was over. So I don't think Sirianni's the next Peterson. I believe Sirianni has probably deserved the right to stay another year. 615-737-1025. We're back to your phone, 615-737-1025. So there's one thing in the NFL that I think fans and front offices alike all overlook, and it happened again last night. And we should keep it in mind. Even though the Titans may not be in this position, we should keep this in mind because it is important. We'll do that next. 615-737-1025 here on Stillman and Company. 615-737-1025. Ian, we apparently have another coaching update, and it is not one that I'm going to like. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game. Speaking of basketball, Vandy basketball. We got a guys game and a gals game. As tomorrow night, Vandy men's basketball takes on Auburn at home. Tip-off is at 8. Pregame is at 7:30. And coverage is available on the 1025 The Game app. And Thursday night, Vandy's women's team will be taking on Auburn at home. Tip-off 6:30. Pregame at 6:15. Also on 94.9 The Fan, the 94.9 The Fan app, and at 949thefan.com.
So glad you brought up Bobby Slowick. Listen, back in week 11, we did a tape on this guy, offensive coordinator for the Texans, Bobby Slowick. He came from San Francisco. This Kyle Shanahan coaching tree's gotten pretty big already. We got Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur, Mike McDaniel. You could say Robert Saleh of the Jets. DeMeco Ryans is right there. I'm telling you, the next name on the list might be Bobby Slowick. Keep an eye on him. And check this out. There's Bobby Slowick. And what showed up last night? Why, it was the exact same play. This time to Dalton Schultz. They call this hiccup. There it is. Look at the run action there to the left, right? We're running bootleg. We're running bootleg here to the boundary. Here it is. Nope. Not so fast. Again, we're setting up, and we're going to heave this throwback all the way back to the far corner. And again, the arm talent to do it. C.J. Stroud, I mean, a cannon, puts it on the money to Dalton Schultz. Huge play in this game against supposedly the number one defense in the NFL. Dissected them. Hats off to him. He deserves a lot of credit.
There you go. That was Alex Smith on Countdown talking about look how good Bobby Slowick is. So I've got good news, and this is all breaking lately. Good news and bad news on the Titans coaching search. Ian, do you want to start with the good news or the bad news?
Good news first.
Good news is Mike Tomlin reportedly just held a team meeting, and he told the Steelers that I'm not going anywhere. He told them, hey, I know there's all this chatter about my job, and yesterday he didn't do anything to throw water on that. But apparently, I believe this is Ian Rappaport, according to Mike Garafolo, in a team meeting today, Mike Tomlin told Steeler players the speculation about him stepping away is unfounded, and he plans on coaching the team in 2024. Tomlin, who is entering the final year of his contract, is expected to address the media later this week. Now, maybe I'm jumping to conclusions here because I guess it's possible that the Steelers could fire Tomlin, but Ian, I think that's pretty safe to say Tomlin's staying in Pittsburgh. And
Yeah, probably so.
I was debating all day.
Is that a surprise? Probably not, right?
Like I said, with Tomlin and the Steelers, they needed to get together and
They
do
have
some
been there.
couples counseling.
Yeah, they've been there for a while.
And it's not that they need couples counseling because it's a bad relationship. They need couples counseling because they've been together for so long, and after a while, you start to get fed up with each other and need to talk your issues out. And so that's good news because the Steelers' job, if it were to hit the market, would either be the best job or second best job. And I've been wrestling with this all day. It would be either the best job or the second best job on the market. I think I would go with the Steelers as the best job. So now you don't have to worry about that. The bad news is, Ian, as you said, or you told me, that the Seattle Seahawks have requested permission to interview Bobby Slowick. Now, that's not the end of the world. But I don't want anybody sniffing too close to Bobby Slowick because I don't know. Is Seattle a better job than Tennessee? But also, they're not a 49ers organization. And it feels like the Titans are trying to be a 49ers organization, so maybe it doesn't mean anything that Bobby Slowick is interviewing or that they have requested permission to interview Bobby Slowick. But I don't like anybody getting too close to my preferred candidate, Bobby Slowick. I am worried of one thing when it comes to Slowick, Ian, and that is I am so high on Slowick that I do fear that will push the Titans in an opposite direction.
Yeah, that's just to spite you.
Well, I think it's obvious that, this is an incredibly influential show. A lot of people listen to it. It wouldn't surprise me if a lot of people over there listen to it. And
They prefer you miserable.
Well, I don't think it's preferring me miserable as much as this is like, Jared Stillman could never be right. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's not a, shot at me. Like, it's not like somebody hates me and so they'd say, well, Jared Stillman's coach. I don't know why it's just this subconscious belief that there's no way Jared Stillman could be right. Then again, they fired Vrabel, and I didn't think they were going to do that, so who knows. Texter into the text line says, Antonio Pierce probably stays with the Raiders. Thomas Brown and Brian Johnson will do face-to-face interviews to fulfill the Rooney Rule for the Titans. Let me say this. I will not, because I'm not the one scheduling these interviews, I will not say that so-and-so is a Rooney Rule candidate, because that's, I think, half of the problem anyways. Right? You're Aaron Glenn, the defensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions, and you get an interview opportunity. Somebody says, hey, we'd like to interview you to be our coach. And Aaron Glenn has to think to himself, do they really want to interview me? Or are they interviewing me because of the Rooney Rule? And that's just unfair. I mean, Leslie Frazier's doing all these interviews. Nobody is hiring Leslie Frazier to be their head coach. And it's really disgraceful. The rule, I'm kind of against the Rooney Rule the more I think about it. Not that I'm against hiring, or forcing people to think more diversely, but just the idea that, you can't make up your mind ahead of time. Some people break up with their significant others because they know who they want to date afterwards. And it's unfair to the candidates to send them out there to say, okay, you got to do this or you got to do that. And that those guys don't really know. Like, does this team actually want to hire me? Or is this team? I can't imagine the Titans are bringing in the offensive coordinator of the Panthers because he did such a good job this year to be their head coach. But what do I know? Dylan says, what's the deal with Mike McCarthy? He seems to have no personality. He doesn't seem to have that leader of men quality coordinators get all the credit for. And he's had Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. Is there any outstanding head coaching quality about McCarthy that I'm missing? And that is an honest question. Let me say this about McCarthy. Dak had his best season. But then when it comes to the big moments, McCarthy and Dak seem equally culpable of choking in big moments. Billy is up next on Bobby Slowick. Thank you for calling and waiting. What's up, Billy?
What's up, Jared? Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Hey, the thing I like about Slowick is that offense is probably missing their best receiver in Tank Dell, and they're still putting up points. But maybe, just maybe, I want to read you some stats here. Nico Collins, first year, rookie year, 446 yards. Second year, 481 yards. This year, 1,297 yards and 8 touchdowns. Maybe, just maybe, Slowick can get something out of Burks. You never know. Thanks for your time, buddy. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so here's the thing about a guy like Bobby Slowick. If he comes in here, there's got to be a hope that he can coach up the offensive players better than what you were getting out of them. And that's not just Burks, right? Like, I look at Peter Skoronski. Every mock draft that I have seen, every single one of them, every mock draft has the Titans taking one of the 2 tackles with the 7th overall pick, which I'm not necessarily against. I don't know enough about it to sit there and tell you that I'm for it, but I'm not against it. You know, you want to take one of the tackles, sure, makes sense. But what if Bobby Slowick is like, no, I scouted Skoronski last year. He's a tackle. He's my left tackle. And I think there's a chance that Slowick could think that. And again, when it comes to the offense, and we talk about collaboration, I mean, I think that's the perfect thing, right? Like, Slowick sits down with Rand Carthon and says, here's what I think on offense. And then Rand's like, all right, we know what you're looking for. We're going to go get it done. And then you put it in the hands of the guru. As far as the stats, I think there's a couple things at play here with Nico Collins. First off, yes, Bobby Slowick is a big part of that. Secondly, C.J. Stroud is a big part of that. And third, John McClain said it last week on the show, Nico Collins is playing for a contract. And we saw Corey Davis when he was playing for a contract and what that looked like. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in. Again, that's 615-737-1025. So yesterday, I was asked, or I guess over the weekend, I was asked about where the Titans rank in terms of the head coach openings right now in the NFL. And then that got me thinking not only about the current openings, but the potential openings around the league and where the Titans rank. And I got to tell you, this might be a very humbling coaching search. We'll get to that coming up next. Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025. Again, if you want to weigh in, 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. So somebody asked me on Sunday, and Ian, you know that feeling when somebody asks you a question and you answer it and then you think about it like all day or at least for like an hour after? Well, I could.
Sure.
That's how I felt about this. Somebody asked me on Sunday, they said, where would you rank the Titans head coaching opening with all the other openings currently in the NFL? And quite frankly, I think a lot of this depends really on your perspective of how you feel about Will Levis. Dan Graziano said after the draft that people in Houston's building preferred Will Levis over C.J. Stroud. Could that person have been Bobby Slowick? I don't know. If you hate Levis, then a team like the Falcons or the Raiders that don't have a quarterback, or at least don't have a long-term for sure they're going to give this guy a try quarterback, might be more appealing to you, or the Commanders, who will have the second pick in the draft, than, say, the Titans, if you don't like Levis. If you do like Levis, then maybe it changes things. So what I decided to do is put together a list of the open jobs and the potentially open jobs. Now, here's a question I want, Ian, based upon the Mike Garafolo report that Mike Tomlin told the Steeler players today in their team meeting that he is not stepping aside and that he plans to continue to coach. And do we leave the Steelers on the board? Because the Steelers could, in theory, still fire Tomlin.
That's true.
Or do we take him off the board?
I tend to lean take him off, but I guess you never know.
So the Steelers would be the number one organization for me in terms of potentially open jobs, simply because they are a proud, well-run organization. They pride themselves on loyalty to a coach, and if you're a coach, that matters to you. And again, on the Tomlin front, who knows? I think Tomlin stays because they don't want to fire him because they don't fire coaches there. And if you're a prospective coach, that's exactly where you want to be. Is somewhere where it's like, it would pain us to fire this coach. So, I mean, to me, the Steelers, it's like finding a wife who isn't the hottest for sure, but gorgeous, great partner, a great potential, parent, comes from a good family, good values, well-educated. Like, that's the Steelers. But let's take them out of this. Let's start at the top.
Number one.
The best job available is the Chargers. That's why it is a slam dunk that Jim Harbaugh is going there. They have a franchise quarterback, and they have star players, a star pass rusher, star receivers, a star running back, a star left tackle. And you're in Los Angeles, which not only has great weather, but at the same time, while it is a major American city, it doesn't have the anger in terms of its sports fans that the other large cities, New York, Chicago, Philadelphia, Boston, it doesn't have the anger of the big city sports fans. And you're the Chargers. You're playing second fiddle anyways. So if you win in L.A., you automatically become a star. Doesn't matter who you are. Sean McVay, Pete Carroll, the Lakers, the Clippers, if they were to ever win, they'd be stars. But if you make it to the playoffs and you get knocked out in the wild card round, and it's not the end of the world. They've got poor ownership, but they don't have bad ownership per se. And so I think the Chargers, I think it's the best job outside of potentially the Steelers. I think it's the best job, and that's why I think it is a slam dunk that Jim Harbaugh will be their next coach.
Number two.
The Cowboys, they are a potential opening. I think we can all agree. I am not a Dak Prescott fan, so this may lower them, based on how I feel when it comes to Dak. And you have to deal with Jerry Jones. But you're coaching America's team. Again, in L.A. with the Chargers, you can kind of slide under the radar, which is good. But if you're going to be on top of the radar, you might as well be the coach of the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, it's America's team. They haven't won anything in 30 years. And every time they're on TV, it's the highest rated game. It's the Cowboys. It's like Alabama. It's like the Yankees. It's like the Lakers. And all of these coaches have inside of them this belief that they can do it. This belief that they are so smart that I am the missing link. And I'm going to be the guy who goes to America's team and restores them to greatness. Then they got guys like CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons and Deron Bland, and they got players. Like Dallas has players, and so the Cowboys are number 2 on the list.
Number 3.
Philadelphia. And I think that Nick Sirianni could be in trouble here. I really do. I wouldn't fire him. But the reason why I am behind the Cowboys when it comes to the Eagles is that they play in the angriest sports city in America. And again, one half-season collapse, and they want to run you out of town like they're trying to run Nick Sirianni out of town. Again, Doug Peterson got fired after winning a Super Bowl. Now, he had a couple of years, but still. Now, I'm not a huge Jalen Hurts guy. In fact, I was really disappointed. Jalen Hurts is a weird player. I was talking to somebody about this yesterday. I said, Jalen Hurts is one of the weirdest players in the NFL. And this even goes back to when he was in college. Because when you think Jalen is good, he goes out and he sucks. Like when he was at Alabama, and Nick Saban has to take him out of a national championship game because the guy can't hit the broadside of a barn. Then we all think he's not very good. And he ends up coming in relief of Tua in the SEC championship game and beats Georgia. Then he transfers to Oklahoma, and he's a Heisman contender. We didn't think he's very good. He's a backup in Philadelphia. They're trying to get Russell Wilson, and all of a sudden, Jalen Hurts has them in the Super Bowl. Signs that $50 million contract. We all think Jalen Hurts is good again, and I don't know if you guys watched the game last night, but holy crap, he stunk. That safety he took was inexcusable last night. So I'm not a Hurts guy. And A.J. Brown, for whatever the reason, has gone off the reservation again. So the Eagles, it's a fun job. You got players, but it is a load.
Number 4.
The Seahawks. They don't have a quarterback, but they have 2 things going for them. It is an established program with John Schneider and with the owners. It was Paul Allen. Now it's his sister. They're a staff. They usually stay out of the way for the most part, though Pete Carroll did throw them under the bus as to why he's not there anymore. And they got receivers. They got receivers. And receivers are the new premium in the NFL outside of quarterback. And they got them.
Number 5.
The Titans. Now, here's why I'm going to put the Titans here at number 5. Because I like Will Levis. I don't love him. He's not a guy like Justin Herbert okay, give me Will Levis. But I do like Will Levis. And so he jumps all the teams that have nothing at quarterback. The owner might be a loose cannon. I don't believe in the general manager. But the Titans are going to be willing to spend money. And Levis plus Spears and a high draft choice might be enough to be able to build an explosive offense around. And then let's not rule out, again, we had a caller in the last hour that was talking about how much better could Bobby Slowick make Treylon Burks. Well, let's not forget, guys like Josh Reynolds have been on this team. We thought they stink, and then all of a sudden, maybe it's you who stinks. So I do like the Titans job. And that could be a guy like Chig. That could be, again, I think the Titans, everybody talks about how bad the roster is. I don't think the roster is that bad. I don't think the roster is worse than the condition that the Houston roster was in. And it seems like Houston, with the right decisions and the right decision makers, Houston seems to be headed in the right direction.
Number 6.
The Raiders. Devontae Adams, yes. Max Crosby, yes. But Max Crosby might not be there if you are not Antonio Pierce and you get that job. Mark Davis, kind of a goofball. Vegas is a nice city. But you got Aiden O'Connell at quarterback, and you play in Patrick Mahomes' division. So how many of these games are you – you got to figure out the quarterback position, and how are you going to do that? And, okay, are they going to force you to see if you can develop O'Connell, or are you going to be able to sign a Sam Darnold or do – and then even then, are you going to be able to compete with Mahomes? The Raiders, it's a tricky job.
Number 7.
The Falcons. They have no quarterback. And not only that, here's the other thing with the Falcons. I don't watch a lot of the Falcons, so I can't tell you exactly what it is. But these guys have been drafted really high. Kyle Pitts was drafted ahead of Jamar Chase. Bijan Robinson was drafted in the top 10. And everybody tells me that these guys are superstars. Now, they were supposed to be superstars when they were drafted. And the knock on Arthur Smith is that Arthur Smith wasn't using them right. Well, I know Arthur Smith is smart. So if Arthur Smith wasn't using the running back right, is it because Arthur's the problem, or is the running back potentially not as good as everybody makes him out to be? And I don't know the answer to that. Because I know if Arthur feels like he's got a running back he can hand the ball to 50 times a game, he will. Because I watched Arthur turn around and hand the ball to a running back 50 times a game. Now, you play in a bad division, and again, you can go sign a Sam Darnold or something like that and give yourself a shot. But no quarterback makes it hard for me to think it's a great job.
Number 8.
The Commanders. Now, I know that Dan Snyder doesn't own the team anymore, but new owners in the NFL can be pretty hands-on. Everybody wants to be Jerry Jones. I bought the Cowboys, and I took them to greatness. Just look at David Tepper in Carolina. Now, Adam Peters is widely regarded as a top GM prospect for forever, and now he will be the GM there. He seems pretty well respected in the NFL. And the second pick is actually beneficial because it means that you don't have to draft Caleb Williams, who I don't want to draft, but if I held the number 1 pick, I would almost feel compelled to do so. So you get your choice between Jaden Daniels or Drake May, and on you go. They got some players on defense. They got some receivers. Again, I don't know this owner. If the owner is great and he'll stay out of everybody's way, and Adam Peters is, everything that everybody says he is, that job would shoot up the list. But right now I'm leery when it comes to the Commanders.
Number 9.
So the Patriots' job's filled, but I'm going to put this in there. What do they have going for them? I mean, they're in a horrible situation. And Robert Kraft seems to think the only problem with that organization is Belichick. Gerard Mayo stays, their personnel department, bad drafts, they stay. It's almost like Kraft saying, Bell is the problem, and we're going to do things with everybody except Bill. And I just don't believe. I mean, who's their quarterback?
Number 10.
The last one's the Panthers. Nobody wants to work for that guy. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. So, again, I like Levis, so it's not a bad list, where the Titans sit, but you're kind of far down when you include Dallas and Philly and some of those other jobs. So, speaking of Philly, what about Nick Sirianni? And what about Mike Vrabel? We'll get to that coming up next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
So after losing 6 of their last 7 games, and we told you earlier how the season started 10-1, should Sirianni be out in Philly?
No. Not after one season. I'm gonna give him an opportunity. High Roseman need to do a better job of fulfilling that back end. I'm gonna be very surprised if that secondary is intact the way it is, because it's not very good. They have some young. Fletcher Cox is getting older. Brandon Graham is getting older, and so
Kelsey's retired.
Kelsey's retiring. Lane Johnson's still playing at an MVP level, but they're going to have to get back to what they was. And I understand you want a natural progression with your quarterback to not nearly to run as much as he once did. But that's who they are.
That's right.
In order for you to maximize what Jalen Hurts is and what this offense is capable of, you're gonna have to have some of those built-in runs in there Saturday. I'm sorry. That's just the way you're gonna have to do it. But defensively, they need a major overhaul, because that defense isn't very good at all.
As Shannon Sharp today, again, we don't know. Nick Sirianni, Mike McCarthy, we don't know. Mike Tomlin, again, he told the team he's planning to come back. The Steelers, we don't know. The Steelers just don't fire coaches. So it's hard for me to believe that if Tomlin wants to be there, that the Steelers aren't going to say, hey, we can work this out. But the Cowboys and the Eagles, I don't know. I think it's 50-50. And I will say this. Mike Vrabel is probably not a fan of mine. I think we can all agree with that. But if the Eagles were to call me, which they wouldn't, but if they were to call me and they were to say, Jared, what do you think about dumping Nick Sirianni and hiring Mike Vrabel? I actually think it might work. When the Cowboys lost, everybody was talking about, could Mike Vrabel be the next coach of the Dallas Cowboys? And I'm like, he could be. But with Dak at quarterback, they're going to run into the same problems that they run into here, which is Ryan Tannehill is good enough to get you to a certain point. And then he can't get you past that. Dak's the same way. Dak on Sunday just had Ryan Tannehill's Bengals performance. And do you expect Vrabel to be able to find the next quarterback of the Cowboys? Do you expect Vrabel to make Dak better? Probably not. I think the issues in Dallas, they've got a good roster. They've got a great offensive line. They've got pass rushers. They've got DBs. They've got receivers. They've got the best kicker in the NFL. It's Dak. And I don't see Vrabel being the guy to elevate Dak or fix Dak. But then when I look at the Eagles, I actually think Mike Vrabel might be a good fit for them. Number one, I don't know what went on there. I don't know why they collapsed the way they did, but the Philadelphia Inquirer had a headline that said the Eagles were being torn apart by number 11 and the guy with a headset. Now, I know AJ went crazy on his way out the door here, but I don't think, again, that's the offseason. They're not seeing each other every day. You can be passive-aggressive during the offseason. During the season, you see everybody in the facility every day. I don't think A.J. Brown would ever treat Mike Vrabel like that. Ever. And so if A.J. is tearing the team apart, you can't get rid of A.J. Brown. We've already learned. You get rid of A.J. Brown, go ahead and cancel the season. So you're not getting rid of A.J. But I do think that Mike Vrabel would respect A.J. Obviously, Nick Sirianni struggled to replace Shane Steichen, who left as his offensive coordinator. I don't think Arthur Smith is getting a head coaching job. Now, I don't know what the relationship between Vrabel and Arthur is, but my guess would be if I'm Vrabel and I'm trying to sell the Eagles as to why I should be their head coach, my sell would be I'm bringing Arthur Smith in to be the offensive coordinator to work with Jalen Hurts. I've got A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith to go with Dallas Goedert. This is going to be the way that we go forward. Yesterday, we saw Dallas Goedert and Jalen Hurts getting into it on the sideline. And it was Marcus who was the guy that was like, Dallas Goedert, it's okay, move on a little bit. Marcus is not. I don't think of Marcus and think Steve Wilkos, the old guy that used to break up fights on the Jerry Springer show. But Vrabel? Where Vrabel is a good coach is stuff like that. So if the Eagles were to call, and they were to say, we're going to fire Sirianni. What do you think about Vrabel? I do think Vrabel has a little Peter Laviolette in him, which is Peter goes in, he coaches for 4 or 5 years, he wins, he pisses everybody off, he gets fired, and he goes on to the next job. And I think Vrabel's got a little bit of that. Guess who's in first place right now? The Rangers. Because that's how Peter is. And I think Vrabel's got a little bit of that in him. And so I really could see Vrabel and the Eagles. I could see that happening. Now, what's crazy about Mike Vrabel, and I don't know if I've told this story on air yet, Ian. If I have, let me know. But, you know, how many times have I told the right tackle story over the years? So when Mike Mularkey got fired, right? I mean, it was a big topic, like leading up to the firing for months. Like, is Mularkey going to get fired? We'll take your calls. I remember a story Floyd told me that his son Sean saw a guy walking on the sidewalk or on the shoulder of the road, and he had a gas can in his hands. And so Sean, picked him up and took him to the gas station. And the guy had 1025 on in his car. And he said to Sean, he goes, "Hey, this is my show. This is the show I listen to every day. This is the show that me and all the drivers that work for the delivery company, this is all we listen to is this show." And he said, "Really? Well, I'm Sean Reese. I'm Floyd Reese's son." And he said, "You fire that coach." And that's how people felt about Mularkey one way or another. Mularkey got fired. And nobody cared about Mularkey from that point forward. Not at all. Like, we'd bring it up, like, Mike Mularkey, there was never a phone call about Mike Mularkey this, Mike Mularkey that. So I almost assumed the same thing would happen with Vrabel. Like, I assumed that fans would say, okay, we're only going forward. We don't care about the past. Vrabel's the past. We don't care. I'll tell you, Vrabel goes to the Eagles, and we're going to be watching Eagle football every weekend, and we're going to be talking about it. If the Eagles are 4-1, we're going to be talking about the Eagles did this and Vrabel did that. And especially if he's with A.J. Brown, we are absolutely going to be doing that. But here's what I find fascinating. I don't know if Mike Vrabel's shtick can work with a big market team. Like, I think Vrabel can coach the team. I think Vrabel can go in there and whatever issues, if there are personality issues, I think Vrabel can sort that out. But I don't know how Vrabel's going to deal with the Philadelphia media. And that would be something that would be fascinating for me to watch. I'd watch every Mike Vrabel press conference after they lose. I mean, you don't like Paul Kaharski now. This is Philadelphia. Like Kevin Byard said last month, something along the lines of, dude, it's different here. Like, it's bigger here. Everything gets out here. It's like, and I don't know how Vrabel would go about handling that. That being said, I do think Vrabel could win with the Eagles, at least a little bit. 615-737-1025. More your phone, 615-737-1025. Titans Twitter was celebrating Rand Carthon last night and the obsession with Kevin Byard. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025, 1025-1063 The Game.
they're not out of this game, but they've got to start having some answers on the offensive side of the ball.
2nd and 4. Here's another broken tackle. This is the rookie Trey Palmer, and he is gone. Touchdown, Buccaneers. Bradbury missed the tackle, and Trey Palmer did the rest. Palmer ran a 4.3340 at the combine, the fastest time. The Buccaneers took the rookie in the 6th round out of Nebraska, and once Bradbury couldn't bring him down, it was over.
Well, you take a look at this last play for the touchdown. Should have been a 6-yard completion. James Bradbury on the outside at corner and just unable to make a tackle. But even in the back end, Kevin Byard, I don't know what that is, but we've seen enough of it all year long. And Trey Palmer takes it to the house. 56-yard touchdown. Amazing job, but it just continues throughout this ball game on both sides of the ball to just show the problems that Philadelphia has had and why they had the collapse that they had to end this season.
Philadelphia's defense, trash. I mean, I got serious 2020 Titans defensive vibes from that Eagles team. That's how bad it was last night. And apparently it's been, I mean, they gave up like 30-something points to the Cardinals at home. It's a disaster. Now, let's talk about Titans Twitter's obsession last night with Kevin Byard. Because I feel like after seeing everybody on Twitter talk about, oh my God, we fleeced the Eagles, it's like everybody wants to fit Rand Carthon for a gold jacket. So first off, I'd like to say when the entire defense plays poorly, then it is much more than just one safety. It is a coaching issue. It is a serious coaching issue. And when I was watching, again, that defense last night on TV, and I like Matt Patricia. I met him a couple of times, friends with Floyd, really nice guy. I mean, really cool, like the time that I met him, but like whatever. I kept thinking back to that Super Bowl where they benched Malcolm Butler and how Nick Foles and the Eagles just scored, it felt like every time they got the ball. That's what I felt like I was watching yesterday. So I think when it comes to all of this, we're looking at a coaching issue that is much bigger, again, than one safety one way or another. Now, that touchdown to Trey Palmer, Byard's tackling attempt, that was the one nugget that I was like, oh my God. Ugh. Now, again, this looked like the 2020 Titans defense. And a lot of people criticized Kevin Byard during 2020. But it wasn't Byard. It was the coaching. It was the players around him. It was much bigger than Byard. Same with this. But I just find it amazing. Now, again, that missed tackle last night was horrible. That was the first time I watched something that the Eagles did, and I said, oh, my God, Kevin Byard, what the hell was that? That's the first time. I've watched these games that are on TV, and I saw him intercept Mahomes, and everybody, oh, Mahomes threw a bad ball, and, well, there's no defense for the perfect pass. But, I mean, last night, the Eagles give up a first down. Byard had nothing to do with it. It's like, oh, what a great trade by Rand Carthon. And it is amazing to me how many people last night were acting like Rand Carthon pulled off the Herschel Walker trade by getting a 5th and 6th round pick for Byard. Some people are comparing it to, he knew. Just like the Titans knew with Jarrell Casey, they knew. But when it came to Casey, there was $10 million that the Titans were going to be on the hook for if they didn't trade him. With Byard, they didn't save any money. They redid the deal. They paid him all that money up front. And so he already had the money. And then he went to Philadelphia. Didn't save any money off of that. So, I mean, I don't think Byard was the elixir for the Philadelphia defensive woes, clearly. And again, Bradbury's missed tackle on the Trey Palmer touchdown last night was disgraceful. Byard's was like one step below that. Again, what did Troy say in that cut? I don't even know what he's trying to do there. That was bad. But I don't think Kevin Byard's a bad player. I don't. I don't think Kevin Byard's so washed he can't. I don't think that. And again, I go back to when the Titans made the decision to trade Kevin Byard. Because at that point in time, they were 2-4. And I was not ready to give up on the season. And I heard Joe talk about this today and actually talk about it well. But I was not ready. Not at all was I ready to give up on the season. When they traded Byard, it kind of felt like they were announcing to the team and to everybody else that they were giving up on the season. Well, is that worth a 5th and a 6th round pick? I mean, I guess you could have traded Derrick Henry and you would have gotten a pick there because you didn't win with Derrick Henry. Could have traded Tannehill, maybe. Could have gotten a pick. But I thought the Titans were right to try to run it back with Tannehill and Henry. And I don't think Tannehill and Henry are the reasons why the Titans were bad this year. The reasons why the Titans were bad this year was because they went out and signed Andre Dillard and gave Aaron Brewer $4.3 million. So I love now, because the Eagles' defense as a whole is terrible, that everybody's like, great job, Ran. And what I have noticed is a narrative shift, which is when it comes to something that maybe looks good for the Titans, we get great job, Ran. Ran knew, Ran saw it, Ran understands. And then on the other side of it, when it's something bad like Andre Dillard, it's, that was Vrabel. Vrabel wanted that. Sure. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Adam in Portland's been waiting patiently and is up next. Adam, go ahead.
Yeah, I think you got to let this one go, dude. Like, everybody's going to have a conflicting opinion on that, and it really doesn't do any good. Because I, for one, was like, good, bye, Byard. Like, anybody pretty much not named Will Levis, I'm like, can leave, but that's not why I called you. I'm just saying I can't sit here and listen to it and not at least talk about it. So my problem watching these playoff games this weekend, because I'm sitting here going, all right, who's going to be the coach? I don't know any of these dudes. Is I'm watching – I did not miss a snap, and I did not see anybody get the kind of pressure that we were getting on our quarterback. And there were elite defenses. There were defenses that we haven't played that I'm seeing play that were like, these guys are really good, and they're not getting home. Like, these guys have 4 or 5 seconds. Will Levis didn't have that all season. Nobody had that all season.
Did you not see that, though, when you would watch other games during the year? Like, I didn't need to see it in the playoff games, but, I mean, I saw that in the regular season. Like, the Titans would play at noon. Levis would be swarmed and murdered, and then I'd watch the game at 3 o'clock, whether it was the Eagles, Packers, Cowboys, Chiefs, whoever, and it was never like that.
It just kind of stood out. I don't know, man. It just kind of jumped off the page to me because I'm like, you know what? Every year we're in the playoffs and we have an opportunity. You know, we at least get to watch football later on, even if it is one and done years. And now we don't have to. I'm sitting here going, it doesn't matter who the coach is, man. Like, it literally does not matter. Anybody, you could coach them and you'll do better as long as you have an offensive line. So somebody's got to start with the offensive line. If we draft a receiver, if we draft in the first 3 rounds, if it's not all linemen, then
Adam, I'm going to stop you there. First of all, free agency happens before the draft. Thank you for your call. I expect the Titans to be active in free agency, and I expect them to be active for offensive linemen. This idea, we don't even know who the freaking coach is going to be. This idea of they have to go offensive line, I'm like, chill out. Like, they may sign guys, they may trade for guys. I mean, there's a lot of options. They need 4 new linemen, and I'll give Skoronski another cut, especially if Bobby Slowick tells me that he thinks he's really good or can move him to left tackle. But the offensive line is a massive problem for the Titans, and everybody knows that, including whomever it is that they hire. I hear all these people say, well, I don't care who you hire as coach if they don't fix the offensive line. And part of that is the coach's job. See, somebody tweeted me. And again, I'm not saying I get 5th and 6th round pick. It's not nothing. It's just really not a lot. When it comes to the trade for Byard, someone says, it's okay to admit you were wrong once in a while. Rand made a great trade, so let him have his due on this one. And I'm like, great. A great trade for a 5th and a 6th round pick. A great trade. If you had gotten a 2nd round pick, like Bill Belichick traded away for Mohamed Sanu at the end of his run, that would have been a great trade. Like the Steelers got for Chase Claypool last year. Ended up being the 32nd pick in the draft. That is a great trade. A 5th and a 6th round pick, you don't save any money on it. And again, Byard was part of that defense that was horrible in 2020, the exact same level of horrible in 2020. And so it's not exactly about him. And we can talk about Byard losing a step. I'm sure he has. But when they traded him, they gave up on the season. And I wasn't ready to give up on the season. 615-737-1025. More of your phones. 615-737-1025 here on Stillman and Company. There was one thing about that game last night, that Eagles game, and then we'll get to your phones about Vrabel and, Byard and Carthon, whatever. But there was one thing about that game last night that, honestly made me sick. We'll get to that coming up next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 The Game.
So now 3rd and 6. Hurts. David at his feet in the end zone. The ball came out, but they are going to see if he was down. Anthony Nelson was on his back. Is this a safety? Either way, it would be a safety with a foul in the end zone and 2 points for Tampa Bay.
intentional grounding offense. Number one, the foul occurred in the end zone. It results in a safety.
It's 18-9.
Into the third quarter. 7-point game. Yes, the Eagles' defense is terrible. But through 3 quarters, they had given up 16 points. That is very much a ball game. And last night, I had no dog in this fight. I don't care about Tampa Bay. I don't care about Philadelphia. I watched the game like I did the other games, right? I didn't have a rooting interest, but I just watched them, and I enjoyed them, even though they weren't great except for that Rams-Detroit game, which was an excellent game. But I literally got sick last night, just viscerally angry over Jalen Hurts taking that safety, and that was the beginning of the end for the Eagles. Now, I know Nick Sirianni's the one who's going to, take the brunt of this. They're probably going to fire both coordinators, and Jalen Hurts is still their quarterback. But what $51 million a year quarterback takes an intentional grounding safety in the end zone in a 7-point game late in the third quarter in the playoffs? What the hell was that? It's almost like I've gotten to the point when it comes to football, if it's not my team, there's like an artistic element in some of this, like a beauty element sometimes, and then there's an incompetent element, and the incompetent element, even when it doesn't necessarily affect the team that I root for, drives me crazy. And that was what Jalen Hurts did last night. Pee-wee football players know that if they go in the end zone and it ain't there, throw that ball away in the vicinity of somebody so that you didn't get called for a safety. It is a 7-point game. And all of a sudden, Hurts gives up the safety, and it was like the floodgates opened. That was terrible. So I just had to get that off my chest. I was so mad last night when that happened. $51 million, and the guy can't get the ball off before he takes an intentional grounding in the end zone. And that was the single biggest play of the game, in my opinion, last night. Just horrendous. Just embarrassing. Like, that's the kind of thing where I could be sitting there talking about Jalen Hurts 5 years from now, and I'll say, I can't get over that safety he took in that Tampa Bay playoff game. One texter says, have you noticed that nobody is interviewing Mike Vrabel? I don't think there is an owner in the NFL that wants an egomaniacal coach that wants more control over the roster and just put up 2 horrible seasons and has consistently hired bad coordinators. Not a single interview yet. Everyone was like, he'll have a job in 5 minutes. No, he will not. Amy Adams Strunk leaked enough out there to make sure that didn't happen. So, again, I'm not going to buy into this belief that Mike Vrabel isn't valued around the league. I do think he is. And you can't hire a guy 5 minutes. You can't do he'll get a job in 5 minutes. You can say it. But teams in the league can't actually do that because they have to interview Rooney Rule candidates and things like that. I will say this. I've heard that Vrabel's getting nibbles, that people are asking, and who knows? My guess is Vrabel will only meet with a team if he feels like it'll be going somewhere. Other than that, there may just be conversations. That's where the agent talks to the team, and then the team says, well, we might have these other guys, and then, okay, we'll call us later. And so I'm not ready to say nobody wants Vrabel. Vrabel's going to coach again in this league. And Vrabel should coach again in this league. And again, with a team like the Eagles, I actually think Vrabel could help out. As crazy as it sounds. As crazy as it may sound for some of those people. Jeff from Hendersonville says, Vrabel, Arthur Smith, Henry, and Tannehill to Philadelphia. Well, Tannehill's not going to go. They have Jalen Hurts, who I am not a humongous fan of. I do think if you're Vrabel, this would be fascinating because I don't know this, and Vrabel would never tell anybody, but I do wonder who Vrabel thinks is the better offensive coordinator, Tim Kelly or Arthur Smith. Because in theory, if Vrabel gets another job, he can take either guy with him. I would hope that he would pick Arthur. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if he picked Tim Kelly. Tim's a Vrabel guy. Arthur was here before Vrabel, and was promoted because Matt LaFleur was trying to take him to Green Bay. And I think there was a lot of animosity between Vrabel and Matt LaFleur. And so I think that because of that, he promoted Arthur just to stick his middle finger in Matt LaFleur's face. But I don't know. Texter says, 5th and 6th round picks aren't good in a trade? Haven't you said you can still get quality players like linemen late in the draft? I mean, Tom Brady was a 6th round pick. You can get those kind of players. But as far as, building around a 5th and a 6th round pick, what happens with 5th and 6th round picks is Jalen Duncan's a good example of this. You draft Jalen Duncan, who has all the measurables to be a tackle in the NFL. He's not good enough yet. His technique's not very good. But you draft him because he's got potential. Then you stick him on the bench for the entire year, and then the next year you see if he's any better. Maybe he develops into a player. But that's what the 5th and the 6th round's for. Not, we're going to rebuild our team with 5th and 6th round picks. Texture says, I think Vrabel's biggest problem is how do you sell a losing coach to a losing fan base who just fired their losing coach? See, I actually think you could do this in Philadelphia better than anywhere else. And you want to know why? Because the argument for Vrabel is those morons in Tennessee traded away A.J. Brown. They had everything going for them. And then they traded away A.J. Brown. So screw them. They're stupid. Hell, have you flipped on the TV in the last week? TV's telling everybody that you're stupid for firing Mark Vrabel. I heard Mark Dominic, a man that I have a lot of respect for, the former general manager of the Bucs, lives in town, good guy. I think he owes me dinner because we bet on Geno Smith's contract, and based upon how you want to read Geno's contract, one of us is the winner and one of us is the loser, but I think we're reading it the way that would be beneficial to us. But I heard Mark Dominic say on NFL radio this weekend, he said, you don't fire Mike Vrabel. I'm like, Mark, you live here. You've seen this offensive line. You've seen Vrabel. Come on now. So I don't think it'd be hard to sell Vrabel. I don't think it'd be hard for Jerry to sell Vrabel. I don't think it'd be hard for the Eagles to sell Vrabel. I don't even think if the Steelers were to decide to move on from Tomlin, which I don't think they're going to, I don't even foresee that being a hard sell. So, I mean, I know you could say, how do you sell Vrabel? But I'll just tell you right now, they're just going to blame the Titans. And from a national perspective, I assume that the Titans look like a franchise that can't take their head out of their own ass. And sometimes that is well-founded. I mean, I'm not going to forgive the Rand Carthon press conference last week. You guys do whatever you want. But that was an organizational meltdown with how that transpired. You've been thinking about firing the coach forever. You fire him on Tuesday morning. You call for a press conference Tuesday afternoon. You have the play-by-play guy sit down with the owner who will not take questions. And then you stick Rand Carthon out there, who, again, didn't make the decision, but I think he's getting too much of a pass around here for how he handled that press conference when it's like, well, he didn't fire Vrabel, so it should have been Amy there instead of him. Sure. But if he's going to go up there, he's got to take some ownership for that decision. We thought this would be we believe, nope. Oh, the ball didn't bounce our way this year. We had injuries. So again, people around the country don't think that the Titans had a Mike Vrabel problem. They think Mike Vrabel had a Titans problem. So that's how you sell Vrabel. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Troy Aikman yesterday made a very important point that I want everybody to hear, especially when it comes to the Titans coaching search. We'll get to that coming up next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios here on the program. So Troy Aikman and Joe Buck have become my favorites. I mean, hands down, not even close. I used to love Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth. They've broken it up. Tirico and Collinsworth, they're fine. But they patronize too much for me. I used to love Tony Romo when he would predict the plays before they happened. Now, I don't even know if Tony Romo watches football outside of the games that he calls. I mean, yesterday he's calling the Steelers game, and he's like, yeah, Jim, I didn't even know much about Jacob Warren before this game. Do you not watch the 40-minute condensed games on NFL Plus? God forbid you watch a little bit of tape. Herb Street's kind of new to the NFL. Al's mailing it in on Amazon. Greg Olson never shuts up on Fox. Joe and Troy are my guys. And don't even get me started on that crew, that Dan Orlovsky and Chris Fowler, Louis Riddick. Terrible. They're like Booger McFarland bad, driving on the sidelines in his little bubble machine. That's how bad they are. And the reason why I like Joe and Troy is because Joe and Troy tell it like it is. They've been doing this long enough, they're grandfathered in, that they're not worried about making the league mad, the players mad, the refs mad, the coaches mad, or even, quite frankly, the audience mad. They'll just say whatever they think. And so last night, Troy Aikman was hammering the Eagles in every single possible direction. But there was one he really hit on, and it was about the Eagles having lost last year's play caller, last year's offensive coordinator, and Shane Steichen, and their inability to replace him and what it meant to their team. This is what Troy Aikman said yesterday.
I don't think there's any question that they do miss Shane Steichen. And you can talk about it being the same offense. They're running the same plays. All that sounds great, but there is an art to calling plays in this league. And I've said, you've heard me say it a lot, Joe, I think the hardest job on a coaching staff is offensive coordinator. They're hard to find. And they had one in Shane Steichen, and we've seen what he was able to do this year in Indianapolis. And Brian Johnson, I like him. He's a fine young coach, but I think the losses of the coordinators has impacted this team.
That's why you hire Bobby Slowick. That is why you hire the guru coach. Things used to be different. But in today's era of the NFL, because of the way the rules are, it's all about the quarterback. The quarterback, the quarterback, the quarterback, the quarterback. Yeah, the quarterback mattered in Bill Walsh's era, which is why Bill Walsh made sure he always had a quarterback. But you could win other ways back then. That's why the Vikings traded all those picks away, or I guess players that then later became picks, all those players that became picks away for Herschel Walker. They felt like you had to have the running back in order to win. Nobody thinks like that anymore. It's a different era in the NFL. And this is what happens to your organization. If you've got it right on offense and you have a defensive head coach, you lose your offensive coordinator. And there is an adjustment. Troy's right. It is hard to replace coordinators. And yeah, they're still running the same offense with Sirianni as the head coach, but Sirianni never called the plays. Bobby Slowick will call the plays. Just like Kyle Shanahan calls the plays, Sean McVay calls the plays, Zach Taylor calls the plays, Matt LaFleur calls the plays. So Matt LaFleur can lose Nathaniel Hackett, and they'll be okay. Sean McVay can lose Matt LaFleur or Zach Taylor, and he'll be okay. Kyle Shanahan loses somebody every year, and they'll be okay. That is why you hire Bobby Slowick. That is why the Titans have to hire a guru offensive coordinator who calls the plays. Because that's what football has become. 5 years ago, the last time the Titans went looking for a coach 6 years ago, I thought it was important to have a ball coach as your head coach. A guy who'd stick that laminated play sheet right there in his shorts. A guy who'd blow the whistle at practice. A guy who lived football every second of the day. That doesn't matter anymore. You just farm out the other side of the ball. Doesn't matter. Just go find some veteran coach, that was a head coach at some point, but he can run the defense, and you'll be fine. Don't worry about it. But it's about the offensive coach. And if you've got Bobby Slowick or you've got Ben Johnson or you've got one of these gurus as your head coach, you'll lose the assistant coaches. If they unlock Will Levis and turn him into Dan Marino, you'll lose the assistant coaches. That's okay. Because the main guy coaching him would be Bobby Slowick or Ben Johnson. And I was even looking at it today. Every time the Titans have had a good coordinator and lost that coordinator to being a head coach, except for Matt LaFleur, who I didn't consider a very good coordinator, and he got the job based upon being associated with McVay more so than what he did with the Titans when he benched Derrick Henry. They have had a massive drop-off the next year every time. 2000 to 2001, Greg Williams gone, Jim Schwartz in. They went from first in the NFL in defense to 25th. Then Jim Schwartz got it figured out, and he left to be the head coach of the Lions. They brought in Chuck Cecil. From 7th to 28th. Arthur Smith to Todd Downing, second in the NFL in total offense. Again, with two elite players, Derrick Henry and A.J. Brown, Corey Davis, Jonnu Smith, Ryan Tannehill. None of them are elite players. Nobody on that offensive line that year was an elite player. Second in the NFL, 17th with Todd Downing. Hell, even going from Dean Pease to Shane Bowen was a massive step back for the Titans. So what happens in the NFL is you get one of these guru coordinators and you make them the head coach, and you'll never have to worry about that side of the ball. And when it's an offensive quarterback guy, you will be maximizing those quarterbacks. So when it comes to Bobby Slowick, and this is why I'd go Bobby Slowick over Ben Johnson more than anything. When it comes to Bobby Slowick, adding Bobby Slowick will hurt the Texans, and it will hurt C.J. Stroud. This young into his career to all of a sudden pull him away. Jalen Hurts was an MVP candidate last year. Shane Steichen goes to the Colts, and Jalen Hurts can't help himself but run 14 yards backwards in a 7-point game in the third quarter and intentionally ground the ball in the end zone. You don't think Shane Steichen mattered to Jalen Hurts? I can go on and on and on and on. We just saw it. Ryan Tannehill loses Arthur Smith. He's not the same guy anymore. So if you hire Bobby Slowick, you're going to hurt the Texans, and you'll never have to worry, as long as he's the head coach, about adjusting at coordinator, especially while you're developing Will Levis. Here's what happens if Will Levis pops and you've got a defensive head coach. Let's say the Titans bring in Mike McDonald from the Ravens, and he takes one of these guys under Todd Monken, and he makes them the offensive coordinator. And Will Levis pops. Well, that guy's gone the next year, and now you go through the same process again. And I can't think of a head coach in recent memory that has been able to just constantly replace those coordinators on the offensive side of the ball who didn't run the offense and call the plays themselves. Troy's right. It's hard to call plays. There is an art to calling plays. Offensive coordinator is the most important position on your coaching staff. And if you hire Bobby Slowick, you don't have to worry about it anymore. What happened to the Eagles? Shane Steichen doesn't call the plays. Dan Campbell is an offensive coach in Detroit. He doesn't call the plays. Those guys take massive hits when they lose their offensive coordinators. Even Bill Belichick had a playoff team with Mac Jones in the Pro Bowl as a Pro Bowl alternate with Josh McDaniels. Josh leaves, and Mac goes down the toilet. Guys, this is why I'm not interested in defensive coaches. Mike McDonald might be brilliant, but I am not interested in a defensive coach because the ecosystem of the league makes it incredibly hard to consistently replace good offensive coordinators, and you will have to do that if you end up hiring a good one. So why not just take the offensive coordinator that has maximized C.J. Stroud in year one, a division rival, and make him your guy? It's really not that complicated. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. And there's another thing that I keep going back to when it comes to the Titans and Bobby Slowick, because, again, I'm worried. If Philadelphia fires their coach and Dallas fires their coach, then how far does that kick you down the list? And then would teams that are above you on the list be going after Bobby Slowick? But there is one thing in particular that probably sways Slowick one way or another. We'll get to that coming up next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
so glad you brought up Bobby Slowick. Listen, back in week 11, we did a tape on this guy, offensive coordinator for the Texans, Bobby Slowick. He came from San Francisco. This Kyle Shanahan coaching tree's gotten pretty big already. We got Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur, Mike McDaniel. You could say Robert Saleh of the Jets. DeMeco Ryans is right there. I'm telling you, the next name on the list might be Bobby Slowick. Keep an eye on him. And check this out. There's Bobby Slowick. And what showed up last night? Why, it was the exact same play. This time to Dalton Schultz. They call this hiccup. There it is. Look at the run action there to the left, right? We're running bootleg. We're running bootleg here to the boundary. Here it is. Nope. Not so fast. Again, we're setting up, and we're going to heave this throwback all the way back to the far corner. And again, the arm talent to do it. C.J. Stroud, I mean, a cannon, puts it on the money to Dalton Schultz. Huge play in this game against supposedly the number one defense in the NFL. Dissected them. Hats off to him. He deserves a lot of credit.
Alex Smith talking about Bobby Slowick. And let me say this about Slowick. You know, there's a lot of people that are like, well, of course Slowick's good. He's got C.J. Stroud. And I'm like, you do realize nobody expected C.J. Stroud to be as good as he is right away. Nobody expected that. How'd he get there? Coaching is about maximizing potential. And right now, Bobby Slowick is doing that when it comes to C.J. Stroud. Now, with the Titans coaching job, one thing that is incredibly important for all of these guys, whether it's Ben Johnson or Brian Callahan or whomever, is what do you think of the quarterback? Because regardless of whether or not you like him, you want to come in and boot him out the door the way Sean Payton booted out Russell Wilson or the way that Josh McDaniels kicked out Derek Carr. You are stuck for this season with Will Levis as your quarterback. And if you don't like him, that is going to be a year against you. So chances are it'd be nice if you did like him and if you did see the potential that could be unlocked when it comes to Levis. I talked to Liam Cohen, the offensive coordinator at Kentucky, who's off the tree. And I talked to him about Levis before the draft. And I can tell you right now, that dude loves Will Levis. That is kind of important. It's not the most important thing, but it is important. So Dan Graziano, right the day after the first round of the draft, when Levis didn't get drafted and Stroud went number 2, Dan Graziano was talking about that decision and how not everybody in Houston actually had Stroud ahead of Levis.
Next April, when we're having these conversations about, well, what do you think this team's going to do? We don't know. Yeah. Right? I mean, we know what we're being told, and we sort the information as best we can, but there were people in the Houston building that liked Will Levis. They weren't the ones that ultimately made the pick. Yeah. Right? C.J. Stroud won out in their evaluation. And I think, similar thing in Indianapolis.
Okay. Dan Graziano's telling you right there. There were people in Houston's building that preferred Levis to C.J. Stroud. I don't know who he's talking about. But if it is Bobby Slowick that he's talking about, that is a massive leg up in your ability to recruit him, to get him to come in and be your head coach. There is also, and I hope this isn't the case, but there is also the possibility that Bobby Slowick was very anti-Will Levis. We won't know. And if he was anti-Levis, then chances are he probably doesn't want the job. But right now, you've got a young, talented quarterback who has the potential. Well, that's what C.J. Stroud was before he started working with Bobby Slowick. Now, C.J. Stroud looks like a franchise quarterback. Why would you not want to take from them and add to you? And then I do wonder if Slowick was the guy that preferred Levis over Stroud. If he can do that with Stroud, holy crap, what could he do with Levis? But we don't know that. 615-737-1025. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Kinston texts in and says, you've been spot on here lately, Jared. I agree. An offensive coach is the way to go. This franchise had its greatest success under a defensive mind, but in that same vein, that could be what's kept us from achieving the ultimate goal, which is to win a ring. Maybe Amy is serious in truly wanting to make the Titans into a winner. Well, I was thinking about this today because it's easy to look at all the Titans' past coaching hires and say, well, Ken Wisenhunt was an offensive guru who called the plays, and Ken Wisenhunt was not on paper a bad hire. Ken Wisenhunt had gone to Arizona, and just like Nick Sirianni, although he called the plays, Ken Wisenhunt was in the Super Bowl. Ken Wisenhunt was very close to winning that Super Bowl. Ken freaking Wisenhunt was very close to winning a Super Bowl in Arizona. He leaves there. Offensive coordinator of the Chargers. Phillip Rivers gets it right. And then all of a sudden, Wisenhunt goes back on the market. Kind of like Dan Quinn, the offensive version of Dan Quinn. And the Titans hired him. The problem was, what I heard, was that Tommy Smith had never met Ken Wisenhunt, and he hired him as the coach. He hired him, reportedly, without ever having met the guy. That's stupid. And if the Titans were to hire Bobby Slowick or Ben Johnson or whatever without having met the guy, that's a problem. Here. So I'm not worried about that. This Wisenhunt was. They hadn't even met him and they hired him. Signed him to a 5-year, and this was a lot of money at the time, 5-year, $5 million contract. And they'd never met the guy. So when it comes to, Amy's serious if we hire the offensive, if Amy pays Mike McDonald a boatload of money, that would mean that she's serious. That doesn't mean that he's going to be any good. But I don't, the offensive coach for me is just, it's where the game is headed. One texter says, did Bobby Slowick pay you for this endorsement? Bobby Slowick is younger than you are. First of all, Bobby Slowick is not younger than me. He's 2 years older than me. Secondly, Sean McVay was 30 years old when he was hired by the Rams. Is that ideal to be 30 years old when you get hired as a head coach? No. But that's where the game's headed, by the way. Coach Shoup used to always tell me, it's a young man's game. Coaching is a young man's game. And that's, again, college pro. They want the young guy. And they want the young guy because you get the young guy and he's good like McVay. He'll be your coach for the next 15 years. That's what you want. So I don't have a problem with Bobby Slowick's age. I also don't have a problem with Bobby Slowick's 1 year of calling the plays. It's been an incredible 1 year. He was a right-hand man to Kyle Shanahan. That's pretty good experience, given where the game is going and how much the Shanahan tree is just absolutely loved. So I truly, and again, I've never met Slowick, but I would just tell you, I don't see a downside in hiring this guy. My only fear is that somebody else who's got a better situation, or in the case of an Adam Peters, who he might trust more than Rand, comes along and offers him the job, and then you end up not getting him. And then we all get upset when he wasn't going to come here. That's all I'm worried about. But, man, I keep looking at Bobby Slowick, and I keep getting excited about what could be. Trevor will join us coming up next here on the program. I'm going to ask Trevor this about C.J. Stroud, and that is, what he's seeing in college and what's he seeing now, and how much of it is because of the coaching. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, it is 4:30 on a Tuesday, which means Trevor Maddich, who is brought to you by Houston Clinic Orthopedics when experience matters. So, Trevor, I want to start with a very complex question, which is C.J. Stroud in college, C.J. Stroud today. What are the similarities? What is the difference? And how much has C.J. Stroud's ascent into the NFL, how much does that encourage you about the possibility of the Titans hiring his coordinator, Bobby Slowick, to be their next head coach?
Well, I think to answer that last question first, I think there's a good chance they'll make a great run at it because we saw what he did in C.J. Stroud's rookie year with Houston, and it was phenomenal. At the same time, Will Levis has some of the same qualities of C.J. Stroud when it comes to his ability to push the ball down the field. And that's what C.J. Stroud did so well at Ohio State. It's what he did so well this year so far with Houston. You know, his completion percentage, Stroud now this year in the regular season was in like 30th, 31st in the NFL of completion percentage. It wasn't great, but he's 5th in yards per completion. And the thing is, he is able to push the ball down the field, and he's got multiple receivers that are having 15, 16, 17 yards per catch on average with Houston. He had the same kind of a thing at Ohio State last year. And so what he did so well was get those chunk plays with the Buckeyes and now again with the Texans. I think part of the reason for that is that he seems so calm that it almost seems like he doesn't care. I mean, when you watched him at Ohio State and they zoomed in on his face mask so you could see his eyes, no matter what the situation was with the Buckeyes, it might have been fourth quarter. You know, it might have been down by a touchdown. They needed to score in order to send it to overtime. Whatever it was, he looked like he was almost disinterested, but he wasn't. He just was calm. His demeanor, he doesn't freak out. And that's one of the things I think that's helped him with the Texans, because what you want to do as a defensive coordinator in the NFL to a rookie quarterback is make him see things that he never even conceived of, much less saw at the college level, in terms of the complexity of the coverages, the complexity of the blitzes, the complexity of the disguises, and have him freak out a little bit. And CJ doesn't freak out at that stuff. He problem solves. Now, he doesn't have all the information yet. He's not nearly as good as he's going to be. But when things are happening really fast, his brain slows everything down for him in a way that he stays calm to work through the mental aspect of the game. It's one of the reasons that he was able to hit those deep balls so often at Ohio State, and one of the reasons he's able to do that so well with the Houston Texans.
How much of Stroud's success is coaching, and how much of Stroud's success is Stroud?
You know, I think there's a good combination of both. Stroud, with his arm talent and with his demeanor, lends himself to good coaching. I mean, a coach knows that if he can put him in the right spot, he'll deliver the ball not only to the right place, but at the right time. And keep in mind, that's really important because of the difference in the definition of an open receiver between college and the NFL. You know, in college, an open receiver is usually wide open. In the NFL, an open receiver might only be open for just a brief period of time during the route, and the ball needs to arrive during that time. It can't be thrown during that time because then the window closes by the time the route comes there. Well, he's got the accuracy to put the ball where the offensive coordinator or the quarterback's coach wants him to put it. So they know that, and that's the start of it, right? And then when it comes to the coach helping him beyond that at both places, Ohio State and Houston, the play calling helped him with scheming open receivers. I mean, at Ohio State, Ryan Day schemed for him in ways that were just flat out unfair because he had first-round draft choices for days in the wide receiver room, and yet they schemed over routes and pick plays, various kinds of pick plays and various kinds of bubble screens and various kinds of things that just gave them an unfair advantage. Mm-hmm. And Coach Slowick in Houston does the same thing. It's not all scheming to make it easy, but at the same time, there's enough scheming to make it easy that they can continue to move the chains, and he can continue to grow not just confidence in his game, but his teammates can grow in their confidence in him.
What do you think one of these offensive guru coaches, they've already interviewed Brian Callahan of the Bengals. Now, he doesn't call the plays, but he's the offensive coordinator in Cincinnati. They are reaching out to Slowick. They're reaching out to Ben Johnson, the OC of the Lions, who I think is going to be in heavy demand. How much do you think one of these guru coaches can do with Will Levis?
I think Levis showed this year that he's got a lot to work with for a coach. He didn't prove he's a franchise quarterback, in my opinion. It's very hard for anybody to do that, although certainly C.J. Stroud is making that case right now. But he showed the arm talent and the improvement in his arm talent. At Kentucky, when he was under pressure his last year there, and he was under pressure a lot, he lost receivers and offensive linemen to the NFL from the year before, where he had his best season in college. He was under pressure, and he tended to default to his fastball. And he would just fire that ball, and it was a thing of beauty, except it wasn't always the appropriate trajectory on the throw. You saw in this year his improvement in that. Sometimes he'd throw those darts. Sometimes he'd loft it a little bit to layer it over the linebacker level and drop it in on the sideline before the safety could get there. Sometimes he would throw rainbows, man. They look like punts deep down the field to let the receiver adjust to it and box out the receiver the defender as it came down. You saw him improve with that. And you saw accuracy in all three of those kinds of trajectories. So I think he can continue with that and continue to improve with that. His demeanor, I thought, showed that he could potentially be a franchise quarterback, because it was unfair to really put him in behind that offensive line and with that receiving group. He did not have receivers that could get open quickly. As a matter of fact, the only receiver that you really trust is DeAndre Hopkins, and he wasn't open a lot. He catches balls, and this is Hopkins' thing. He'll catch balls when he's covered, because he's just so good and so strong at fighting through the defender's hands with his hands and using his body to create just enough of a box out to make those catches anyway. But from a rookie quarterback standpoint, that's kind of terrifying to throw that ball to a receiver who's not open, not even NFL open. He's DeAndre Hopkins open. And he was able to do that, Will Levis was. So it was unfair to put this group of receivers beyond Hopkins in front of him, and then that offensive line in front of him. He was hit hard repeatedly from multiple directions. Neither tackle could block. The center couldn't drop anchor. And so on any given pass play, he was going to get hit from somebody coming from somewhere different every time, and a lot of times multiple directions. And he kept on standing in and delivering throws just before he got hit. When he couldn't do that and he got smashed, he kept getting back up and focusing on the next play. That kind of mental demeanor is something else that indicates that Will Levis can grow into an outstanding franchise quarterback. Now, he needs to continue it. But if you can do what he did this year with the team around him that he had, I think that, and really a running game that wasn't all that good, because there was no passing game. And as you know, Derrick Henry did a lot of good things, but at the same time, and Spears was phenomenal, by the way. At the same time, the running game didn't help him very much, and the defense knew it wouldn't help him very much. All of those things that were bearing down on a rookie quarterback's opportunity to get his talent on the field his first year as a starter, all of those things I thought he dealt with or overcame. And so I think, you get the right coach in here and you get the right players around him. I am very happy with Will Levis going forward.
Trevor, what do you make of the trend in the NFL to hire the offensive guru coaches, the Kyle Shanahans, the Sean McVays, and then kind of the offspring of those guys, whether it's Matt LaFleur and what they've done with Jordan Love in Green Bay, Zach Taylor in Cincinnati. Now, granted, Joe Burrow's great, but I certainly don't think that Taylor has hurt Joe Burrow. And so it feels like, Slowick, for instance, is the next guy there. Ben Johnson of the Lions, he's one of the gurus. What do you think of that? And I look at the Eagles last night where Shane Steichen was the guru there. He goes to Indianapolis, and Jalen Hurts doesn't look the same. What do you think of that trend in the NFL?
I think it's a good trend. And I've heard you talking about this, Jared, and I absolutely agree with what you've said about how if you make that offensive guru the head coach, then when other teams come and cherry pick and poach players off or coaches off of your staff, poach is not the right word because it's not, that's a negative connotation. But when they come in and hire coaches off of your staff, your offense remains the same. I mean, we look at the young guys that are out there. Kyle Shanahan with San Francisco. Sean McVay, Super Bowl winning young quarterback or coach with the Rams. Then you look at the older guys in Andy Reid, for example, with the Chiefs. As coordinators have come and gone, the offensive system stays the same. The hardest thing, I think, the hardest position to play in sports is quarterback, right? In the NFL. Part of the reason is because of the complexity of it. And it's not just the complexity of learning your own offense, it's the complexity of knowing so much about opponents' defenses that you can apply nuances of your offense against nuanced weaknesses of the defense, and you can do it in the space of 2.5 seconds. That's the hardest thing. And so as you change offensive schemes, offensive styles, offensive nomenclature, it makes the quarterback relearn those things. And now you're thinking again instead of reacting. And so, that's one of the reasons why the consistent offensive schemes with the same quarterback tend to produce teams that excel for a longer period of time. And so if you hire that offensive coach, then that part of it is taken care of because he'll bring in another offensive coordinator that will learn the head coach's offensive scheme and then apply that to the quarterback in the offense. So there's not a big change for those players on that side of the ball, and especially at that quarterback position. As defensive coordinators come and go, defensive coordinator is important. But at the same time, it's easier to break things than it is to build things. And for a quarterback to be successful, he needs to build at the highest level in the finest detail. Defenses, you can come in with a simplified scheme, and if you've got the players, you can just be a wrecking ball and have some success while you're learning the nuances. So I agree with you that bringing in a head coach who is that offensive guru gives them the best chance for a young quarterback like Will Levis to have an uninterrupted learning curve as he approaches his prime in a couple of years.
Trevor Maddich is with us. I do have one follow-up question on the OC gurus that I do want to get to with Trevor next. And Mel Kiper Jr. does not have his official mock draft out, but they did go over the first 15 picks. A lot of Titans fans will be very happy with the name that comes up out of Mel Kiper Jr.'s mouth. We'll get to that with Trevor, and we'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Trevor Maddich is presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics. When experience matters, Mel Kiper Jr. has not put out an official mock draft yet. He says he'll do that around the Super Bowl. But Trevor, right now, he and Field Yates went over the top 10 picks in the draft, and at 7, he has the Titans taking Joe Alt, the left tackle out of Notre Dame. Now, Rand Carthon said last week that he would not rule out moving Peter Skoronski over to left tackle, which I think could be on the table. We don't even know who the coach is yet for the Titans. So I ask you this question. 1, what do you think of Joe Alt, who everybody around here seems to keep talking about? 2, do you really think he'll be available at 7? And 3, how would he compare to taking one of those high-end wide receivers in this year's draft?
Well, tackle is one of the deepest positions at this in this draft. And so the guys at the top are really strong, but guys in the second round and maybe even third are guys that will probably be able to play for you. Joe Alt from Notre Dame is phenomenal. He is 6'8", 315. He's a powerful run blocker. He is phenomenal as a pass blocker. Drops anchor really well, which is something that we have not seen at left tackle for the Titans for a long time, meaning when he's got a bull rush on him, instead of being on roller skates, push back into the quarterback, he drops anchor and just stops that rush right there. Skoronski, by the way, at left tackle, showed that same ability at Northwestern. And Alt in over 1,000 pass attempts. Mel Kiper has listed that he's only got 16 pressures in over 1,000 pass blocking pass attempts at Notre Dame. So that is phenomenal. And if he's there for the Titans at 7, then I think it would be a phenomenal thing to take him. Also, though, another guy that would be really good is Olu Fashanu of Penn State. He doesn't quite have quite as much experience as Joe Alt does, but he's got every bit the upside, maybe even more upside than Alt, and he shares a lot of the characteristics that Joe Alt has. And so one of those guys is going to be there at 7. Part of the reason is if these mock drafts and if these rankings turn out to be true, the top 6 draftees, this is according to Jordan Reed now, Jordan Reed in his mock draft, ESPN, he's got 3 quarterbacks and 3 receivers in the top 6. And so every offensive lineman will be available at 7 according to that. And if it holds true that you've got teams that are going up to get quarterbacks and receivers, then one of those 2 left tackles is going to be there. And so I think it would be phenomenal to take them. At the same time, there's some guys that they'll be able to get in the second and even third round that I like also. And so I think a star at left tackle would be what they need. I would like to see them keep Skoronski at left guard if possible. Then if you pair those 2 together, you've got a couple of guys that'll be on or near their rookie contracts that will be able to develop for several years together as a duo on the left side of the line, and it will go from a weak spot to a strong spot. And about Skoronski, by the way, he started out, I thought, strong, showed a lot of great potential early in the season. In the middle of the season and then towards the end, I thought he fell off and his play diminished. As I watched him, it looked to me like he was trying to give too much help to his center on the inside, who was only 270 pounds, and his left tackle on the outside, who, as they rotated guys through that can't play, needed all the help they could get, and he didn't pay enough attention to the guy in front of him. Well, against the Jaguars, it looked like he just said, okay, fine, I'm playing my position this time, and he was dominant against the Jaguars for the most part. I think he will be a dominant left guard, and you pair him with Fashanu of Penn State or Alt from Notre Dame, and I think you'll have one of the best left sides of the line in the entire NFL once they've settled in for a year or 2.
If you had to pick between the Notre Dame left tackle or the Penn State left tackle, who would you take?
I'd take the Notre Dame. He's got more experience, and he's got Pro Bowl upside, just like the Penn State guy does. And I think I would take the guy that I trust the most with the technique that's the very best. But Fashanu, the Penn State left tackle, is not far behind him, and it's only because he hasn't started as many games. I watch him play for Penn State, and just the way he moves, the way his balance, he keeps his balance when he's sliding back and forth, when defenders are hitting him, not just straight up. It's easy to keep your balance then, but when they're hitting him on the edges, on his inside shoulder, on his outside shoulder, when they're trying to turn him, he slides right in front of him and has the power to turn that back into a squared up block. It's just amazing what Fashanu is able to do.
Trevor, I saw a report that Jim Harbaugh is negotiating with Michigan, but that in part of the negotiations, Harbaugh wants his contract to be protected, even if Michigan and he are found guilty for whatever it may be, like the sign stealing, it may be anything. Just total immunity Harbaugh wants. That's not going to happen, is it? Harbaugh to the Chargers is going to happen, right?
I believe that Harbaugh to the NFL is going to happen. The Chargers are looking like a strong candidate for him right now, but he, or certainly his agent, have to consider all possible contingencies. And it's possible that the Chargers will go a different direction. You and I talked before about the possibility, not necessarily the likelihood, but certainly the possibility that Pete Carroll, the now former Seattle Seahawks coach, might end up going down there to coach the Chargers. That's not out of the question. And if you are Harbaugh's agent, you've got to be thinking that you need to prepare for contingencies like that, even if they aren't likely. And now is when Harbaugh has maximum leverage over the negotiators at the University of Michigan. Now he could tell them, look, we're talking to the Chargers, we're talking to the Commanders or whoever else they might be talking to, and say, look, Michigan, if you want him to stay, you're going to have to give him these guarantees that if the NCAA comes down with any kind of sanctions against him, his contract will still be paid in full. Because keep in mind that a couple of years ago, Harbaugh was struggling. I mean, he started his tenure at Michigan. He was 0-5 against Ohio State. He had not won a Big Ten championship, and he was on the hot seat. And the administration, they cut his pay because he was making like $9 million a year, some ridiculous amount of money, and he wasn't giving the results. They cut his pay. And I wouldn't be surprised if he wouldn't be happy just to give them a headbutt in the next contract to say, you will never cut my pay again, even if the NCAA comes down with this. Now, I still expect him to go to the NFL, but this is his maximum point of leverage, and why not use it?
Last one for you quickly. Trevor Maddich is with us. All of these potential coaching candidates, a lot of them are still playing this weekend in the divisional round. What would you I want you to educate us. What would you tell us to watch for as far as determining whether or not these guys, especially the offensive play callers, but really all of them, can be the next coach of the Titans?
Adjustments. When things are going poorly in the first half, or even quarter to quarter, or especially drive to drive, things aren't turning out the way they thought they would turn out in their preparation. The opponent is running things differently. They're using different formations. They're running counters out of formations of personnel groups to plays that you expect them to run out of those formations of personnel groups. How quickly and how effectively do they adjust so that their schemes now have at least an equal footing, if not an upper hand? A lot of times you'll see coaches be out-schemed for an entire half, and then at halftime, they'll make some adjustments. Well, that's interesting in college. In the NFL, that's too late. So the speed and effectiveness of in-game adjustments is one thing you can be looking for.
Trevor Maddich, as always, is presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics. When experience matters. Trevor, great stuff. We'll talk next week.
Thanks, Jared.
Yep, Trevor Maddich, as always, on our program. And I think we should take that to heart. Barry Trotz will join us next. Boy, the Predators, they actually outplayed Vegas last night and lost, coming off of what was a wonderful weekend. We'll get into that with Barry. We'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. Thanks to all of our great friends. And we are live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. So the Predators last night dropped one in Vegas, and I got to tell you, that was a frustrating game last night in Vegas. I'd say Friday night they play this huge game against Dallas, and I thought they played great. I thought it was gritty. I thought it was tough. I thought it was, I don't want to say a statement win Friday night, but it was something. Then Saturday didn't have their fastball, but they held it together. They got great goaltending. And then that knuckle puck from Carrier with 7 seconds to go. And all of a sudden the Predators had a great weekend. Then they go to Vegas, the defending Cup champions. And quite frankly, through the first period, it was a lot of what had been happening to the Predators, where the Predators will go out in the first period, they'll get outshot, something like 13-3. And they'll be down 2-0, but they didn't have anything to show for it. Vegas ends up taking a lead, and then Roman Josi on the 4-on-4, ends up getting caught, and it's a 2-on-1, and Vegas puts it in, and all of a sudden the Predators end up losing. They get no points out of it. Again, frustrating last night. They still sit in the playoff contention, in the first wild card spot. Barry Trotz joins us, general manager of the Predators, presented by Gary Force Acura. So, Barry, I want to start first on the weekend, which we were talking about on Friday. Dallas and New York. You had the loss last week you didn't like against Anaheim. You get both of those games. What did you feel out of the weekend?
Well, I think out of the weekend I felt extremely proud of the guys. Going into Dallas, it's a 4-point game. Dallas has a little bit of separation from us, but the only way that you can, close the ground, if you will, is to beat those teams that are right there. And I thought Dallas has had our number probably the last couple of years. I was really happy with the response in Dallas, based because of our game against Anaheim was not where we wanted to be. And then I knew that the Islanders really needed that game. They were waiting in Nashville for us, and they're in a fight for a playoff spot. I really thought that was going to be a really tough weekend, and obviously we expended a lot of energy getting Dallas that night, a lot of commitment, good goaltending, everything that you want your team to do. They showed all those elements, how to win, and I thought it was really going to be a tough turnaround for us against the Islanders, and that was a physical game. The number of hits between the two teams was very, very high. It was intense, and you knew that you were going to have to fight for every goal and every inch, and that's the way the game played out. And then right at the end, we were able to pull it out with a knuckle puck that Carrier shot. Went off I think it was Mayfield's stick and busted his stick and floated over Sorokin. So you could try that same play 1,000 times. It won't happen. But I thought we played well. Physical. We were consistent. We needed a big power play goal in that game to get the tied up, and Evangelista does that. So contributions through everybody on the weekend to get the 4 points, and then knowing that we'd have to travel across the country and play Vegas last night. And I thought last night our first period was almost perfect. I was sitting there for the first 15 minutes going, we're playing a perfect period on the road right now, not getting anything to show for it. I even had some fans to the left of me in the press box who were yelling, let's play over here, which meaning in the Nashville end, because they never really got into our end. They barely got over the red line. I thought we had an excellent first, but Mark Stone capitalized on a little bit of a loose puck, and you're sitting there going, we just had a terrific period for probably 17 of the 20 minutes, and you're down 1-0. So I've been in a lot of those situations where your team is playing really well, and then you sort of get gut punched a little bit with a goal, and it's mentally hard. But I thought we battled through the 4-on-4 play. I thought the third goal was the difference maker in the game. I thought we were going to get points last night. We 4-on-4. I think it was McCarron who was out there for the faceoff, did a good job. He got it, and then I think he threw a cross ice pass, and we were slow on the change. I think it was Parsonen for McCarron, and they came down on a 2-on-1, and then Mark Stone scores again. And I thought it was a really, really big goal for momentum, big goal because they're a good hockey team. They're the Stanley Cup champion, Stanley Cup champions right now, and they have a good hockey team. So it was going to be a battle, and I thought we closed it to 1 goal. I thought we had a really good chance to get points, but that third goal was really the one that was that did us in.
Barry, I'm in complete agreement with you on last night's game. I thought it was the kind of game where it felt like a measuring stick game going into it, and then I was a little frustrated because I thought the Predators played pretty well and ended up, to your point, with no points. But Roman Josi was kind of caught behind the play on that 4-on-4 goal that was kind of the difference maker last night. And for me, it was a moment where it kind of has been boiling over this season where I am used to Roman Josi playing at a certain level that is exceptional in both ends. In his own end, I think he's a great offensive defenseman, but I think he's really good in his own end. And I feel like this season, he hasn't met his expectations so far this year, or the expectations that we're just accustomed to having for him. But you watch it every night. You get the reports from the coaches and the analytics and everything else. What do you see in Roman Josi right now, where he is and where he should be?
Well, I think what you've seen is a standard of excellence with Roman for, I don't know how many years, now. And I would say that Roman is playing still at a very, very high, excellent level. I think this year, because of the fact that there's a little bit of change the way we play. You play a certain way for 20 years, and then all of a sudden we're going to play a little differently. There's going to be some time to adapt, but we want him to join the play. I think it's going to help in his long-term durability. I think he can play bigger minutes because of the way we play, and hopefully that helps his career. Some of the people will say that maybe defensively he's not as good or whatever. I don't see that. I would see some him adapting to the situational stuff that happens because of the way we play. We were playing with a lot more risk than we have in the past, so there's times he's not going to look. It puts him at risk, defensively. Because, they're asked to get up in the play. They're asked to trust the guy with the puck. For instance, on that third goal, he was trusting that puck was going to go deep or it was going to go into his corner. It wasn't going to go cross ice and be picked off. Mm-hmm. And so when people look at that, sometimes you can fault a player like Roman, who's a defenseman up there. But really, it is on puck management sometimes, and the decisions made by the puck carriers. So, I'd go over that play again and give you as a coach and watch it on film again and define it for you. But that's part of what I see at times is some of the decision making with the puck when we have it, and Roman's trying to complement it by getting in position so that he can complement the offensive part of it. So, but I see that in Carrier. I see that in different guys at different times. So it's not Roman. I think Roman's excellent. I think he's a cornerstone to our franchise. And if we don't have Roman, we're not winning as many hockey games. And I know that for a fact. And I will. So I love Roman as a player. I love Roman as a person. I think. He's a cornerstone in the National Hockey League. But there's an adjustment time for him, just as there is for anybody in our hockey team.
What about Luke Evangelista, Barry? Because he scored in each of the last 2 games. Huge goals, I think, in both games. I mean, I know you didn't end up winning last night, but I thought it was a huge goal when he scored it. We've been talking about secondary scoring. We've been talking about young guys kind of breaking through. How do you feel about what you're seeing out of Evangelista right now? And is it something, and Tomasino's coming along too, is it something with those young guys where all of a sudden we can start to count on them as being major contributors to the team in the not-so-distant future?
Well, I think what you said, you're very accurate on Luke and Palmer. I think what we want to see in the end game for those players and for the franchise is that night in and night out, you're going to get something from Luke. Night in and night out, you're going to get something from Palmer. I would say, through the first part of the games, we've had stretches where they were contributing, nightly in 4 or 5 games straight, and then there'd be a dry spell, and then they'd pop up for a game or two in here. But I really think that, I would say since Christmas, you can see Luke having I want to say not a bigger piece, but taking on a little more responsibility, being relied on, being a little more consistent. You're seeing that with Tomasino. His details and his systematic play is much improved. His moving and work ethic. I shouldn't say work ethic. Some of those skill guys will sometimes watch the game and not move their feet. He's now moving his feet to complement all the systematic things that have to happen for you to be successful with and without the puck. You're seeing it on a consistent basis. You're seeing him getting chances, and now you want to just see him scoring on a regular basis. So the end game is exactly that. If we can get, O'Reilly's line always contributing at a high level, and then you get that secondary scoring, that makes us a very, very dangerous hockey team. And we get some production from guys like Roman and Carr and even, Lazon lately on the back end. I mean, that makes us a really, really tough team to play against because everybody's contributing. And I think the other thing that's under the radar is teams, I've ran into my former team. I've run into, obviously the people in Vegas. I'm starting to do some traveling, running into my counterparts and some of the scouts. They were not surprised, but we were starting to have an identity just listening to them talk that we have, we're bigger than they think, and we're a little more physical than they think. We're playing faster than before, and so all those things. I just pulled up the sheet, the game sheet from last night. So I had it in front of me. We had 48 hits against a very big Vegas team. And that was set upstairs as, didn't realize how physical you guys are. And I think that's sort of that's a great identity. If people think when you walk into the rink, man, Nashville Predators, they're a pretty physical team. That'll push some of those, I'll say the guys that have a little bit of a weaker spine out of their comfort zone a little bit. So I love when people come around and say, hey, we got that identity. If we have a 4-line identity with some physicality or good power play, or we got, we come at you in waves. Those are sort of identity pieces and cultural pieces that you want to establish so that, you get an edge over a team. If I remember when I had the Islanders and we had our lockdown, we weren't giving up much defensively. There'd be games. We'd come into a game and I remember we were playing Winnipeg. And I think it was, I want to say it was Mark Scheifele or Blake Wheeler, one of their top guys, says, hey, playing the Islanders is like trying to, it's like, going to work on Monday. You have to do it, but you really don't want to go. And getting that identity, whatever our identity turns out to be here, having a identity, you get in the team's, your opposition's head right away. That's just an advantage. So I love the fact that teams are saying, hey, we're more physical than we thought you were.
Barry Trotz is with us, presented by Gary Force Acura. So Yaroslav Askarov has been lighting it up in Milwaukee, and he's been named to the AHL All-Star team. And I know that you've talked about bringing up some of these guys for a game here or there and sending them back. But as far as on the Barry Trotz ready meter, where is Askarov with the way that he's playing right now in Milwaukee?
Well, he's, I would say, early in the year he looked like a young top prospect who still looked like he had some minor league in his game. I would say that in probably around Christmas, it's changed. He sort of got to another glass ceiling. I want to say that it had a lot to do with him going from the black pads to the white pads because it is known to a little bit of optics, but we wear black. I'm a overweight man. I wear black because it has no swimming effect. And I think wearing the black pads, he looks smaller than he really is. And then by putting on, he's changed his. We asked him to go with the white pads and the white gloves and all that. He looks massive in the net, and I think that's playing into the minds of the opposition now. They're trying to see the net, and you can't really see it. He's going, this guy's massive. So he's playing really, really well. He looks like he is the breaking through what I call another glass ceiling as a prospect. And I hear that. Obviously, we were in Vegas the other night, and I saw former Pred Joel Ward. He works with Vegas as an assistant coach, and he saw our team in Henderson and was talking about our prospects. And he said that Ashcroft, we got back-to-back shutouts, but he said he looked great. So I'm really happy that he's breaking through another glass ceiling, hopefully, and he's on the path to get some more games. Right now we have pretty well a full roster with 23, unless we get some injuries and or remove some people or send some people down. We don't have a lot of flexibility right now, but it's a long season. People go down in bunches at times, it seems, in this league. So I'm sure you're going to see it's not Askarov. It could be Stastny, Delgado, Svechkov, Kemmel, LaRue, Schaefer. We've got a number of people that are playing really well. Milwaukee's a young team. They're first place in their division, which is fantastic. So there's a lot of good things happening within the organization quietly, which was really good, and it's getting noticed by other teams in the league as well.
Barry Trotz is presented by Gary Force Acura every week. Barry, enjoy the Los Angeles weather while we all sit here in the single digits with snow on the ground. And enjoy that, and then you guys will be in Arizona on Saturday as well, and we'll see you soon around the corner. Appreciate you, Barry.
Absolutely. You guys take care. Be safe with the slippery streets, and stay warm.
There you go. Barry Trotz. He's from Canada. He knows. Joining us on the program, as always. And I'll say, he made me feel better about something, which I want to touch on next, and we'll do that because last night's game, very encouraging when it's a measuring stick kind of game, but very discouraging from the result that they got. We'll touch on that. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Evangelista checked by White Cloud. As the puck sent back to Yossi at the blue line. Yossi deals it off, and the shot and the score! Alex Carrier with the shot. Certainly it was deflected, and the Predators are on the board with 2:38 remaining in the second period.
Pretty boy Vincenzo.
I thought they had a shot, Ian, when they put that one in there yesterday against Vegas.
For sure.
I am torn with how I feel right now because last Tuesday they had a dud against Anaheim. Last night they played well but lost to a really good team. And then in between they had a good game Friday night and a tough game Saturday night. And the net is 0. 4 points in the 2 wins, no points in the 2 losses. Now, one thing that is bothering me about the Predators is Roman Yossi's play. And Barry said that what Barry said about how he felt like that third goal yesterday where they had the 2-on-1 and Mark Stone put it in the net for the hat trick. I, last night, was on my elliptical watching the Steelers and the Bills, and then on my iPad I had the Predators. And I was really kind of more focused on the Predators because that Steelers-Bills game was boring as hell. And I'm looking at this, and I see them score, and I see the hats flying onto the ice. And for me, that was a moment where I was like, okay, this one's over. And the way Barry felt is exactly how I felt. But I was so frustrated right before the end of the second period for Roman Josi to give that goal up. And I feel like there's too many times this year where I've seen the puck in the back of the Preds net, and I'm like, Roman Josi's out there. You know, it's one thing when it's Lazan or Tyson Barrie or whomever, but Fabro, Josi's one of the good players. And I think Barry hinted at it a little bit by just saying, hey, it's been an adjustment. So I am going to defer. To Barry on that and the fact that Roman Josi has been a great player for a long, long time. But I really feel like the way that Forsberg has elevated his game, the way that Ryan O'Reilly is just so everything. He's good on the power play. You can put him on the penalty kill. He's good in his own end. He's a great player. He's great. So much better than, that whole Johansson and Duchesne and waiting on them kind of thing. And that's even with Duchesne playing as well as he's playing in Dallas right now. I couldn't give a rat's ass about that. But then it's like, when's Roman Josi plan on joining the party? But I'll defer to Barry and the fact that, quite frankly, and we won't always do that. I'm going to do it right now because Roman's got the resume and because the team's winning some games. Now, all I want this entire season, and this is how I feel about every single one of these games, is I just want one competitive playoff series. Not one playoff series where they get their teeth kicked in and they can't compete like they did against Colorado 2 years ago. But one competitive playoff series where it is a freaking battle, and it'd be really nice if the Predators could win it, but I'm not banking on it. Right now, Money Puck gives them a 43% chance to make the playoffs. I don't even truly know how to feel about the standings because the Predators are technically the first wild card team in, but they've got 5. Edmonton has 5 games in hand and is 2 points behind. So
Edmonton's a lock, yeah.
Put Edmonton ahead of them.
They're a lock.
I mean, that's what actually kind of makes this game. I mean, Vegas or LA's got games in hand.
They'll be a lock too. There's one spot. There's one spot open for Nashville, Seattle, Calgary, Arizona.
Who you play on Saturday?
So, I mean, there's one spot for like 4 teams. It's going to be like that pretty much for the entire, unless somebody really, slips and falls who's in a spot right now. I don't see that happening for LA. I don't see that really happening for Vegas.
Well, I worry that could be you.
Vancouver. It could be the Preds for sure. I'm just saying, like, as far as the teams that are already like a top 3, I'm not sure I see anybody really falling. And I'm not sure there's a team that I could see having a big slip up stretch. So
makes me nervous.
It's going to be one spot for a bunch of teams. It should be interesting.
Makes me nervous. And here's the stat that like matters for all of this, right? The goal differential. So all the teams that are for sure going to make the playoffs in the Western Conference, Winnipeg plus 42, Colorado and Dallas are both plus 26, Vancouver plus 54, Vegas plus 20, LA plus 30, Edmonton plus 21. Then there's you at plus 1, Seattle minus 3, Calgary minus 1, Arizona plus 3. Every other team for the most part, I mean, I guess St. Louis is a contender, but for the most part, out of it. That's it. And that makes me nervous. 615-737-1025. I just want one competitive playoff series. That's all I ask. And if I get more than that, freaking great. But that's all I want. 615-737-1025. The Titans coaching search. There is one name that stands alone. And then there are some sub-tiers after that. We'll get to that next. Here on Stillman and Company, twice daily. I love them. They want to send you to Italy. That's right. How freaking cool would that be? Buy any made-to-order Italian sub and use your rewards app to get entered to win. Every sub is a chance to win, and mobile-ordered Italian subs count as 2 times entries. Visit twicedaily.com/sweepstakes for more details. And in times like this where places may not be open, you may be running out, Twice Daily's made-to-order offerings allow you to get exactly what you want when you want it. Customize sandwiches with your preferred meats and cheeses and get bagels with all the fixings and have snacks prepared the second you order. Twice Daily's got you covered with made-to-order selections for breakfast, lunch, and everything in between. Download the Twice Daily app and join their loyalty program to unlock special discount savings and so much more. It pays to be a member with Twice Daily, where you'll earn points and save money with every single visit. If you're looking for convenience, Twice Daily has you covered. Twice Daily, fresh all day.
I don't think there's any question that they do miss Shane Steichen. And you can talk about it being the same offense. They're running the same plays. All that sounds great, but there is an art to calling plays in this league. And I've said, you've heard me say it a lot, Joe, I think the hardest job on a coaching staff is offensive coordinator. They're hard to find. And they had one in Shane Steichen, and we've seen what he was able to do this year in Indianapolis. And Brian Johnson, I like him. He's a fine young coach, but I think the losses of the coordinators has impacted this team.
Troy, telling it like it is. Hardest job, offensive coordinator. There is an art to calling plays. Shane Steichen leaves the Eagles. Jalen Hurts looks like a regular old second-round pick quarterback, not the $51 million a year guy that they had last year. Also, Troy, I like Brian Johnson. He's a fine young coach. That's the nice way of saying he's got a nice personality. But he ain't Shane Steichen. So right now, the betting favorite to be the next head coach of the Tennessee Titans is Bobby Slowick, the offensive coordinator of the Houston Texans. And I am bracing myself because I think not only is he the betting favorite, which I know is a fact, not only is he my favorite for the head coaching position with the Tennessee Titans, but I also actually think, and I have no sourced info on this, nor have I asked, but I think he's their favorite too. I think, again, my favorite guy, Vegas's favorite guy, the Titans' favorite guy, I think it's the same guy. And so now I'm just nervous. I'm just nervous that there's something that I don't know about, whether it is he doesn't want to be here, whether it is actually the Chargers aren't that interested in Jim Harbaugh and they're going to offer him the job, whatever it may be. I am nervous that the Titans are not going to end up with Bobby Slowick, who I do believe checks all those boxes. And not only that, taking Bobby Slowick from the Texans would make them and C.J. Stroud worse, just like Troy was talking about. The lack of Shane Steichen has made Jalen Hurts and the Eagles worse. So to me, I think that, I saw that James Foster, No Flags Films, I saw that he put up there like his tiers of coaches for the Titans. And he had Bobby Slowick tier 4. And I love this guy's work, but I'm like, dude, what are you doing with Bobby Slowick in tier 4? So instead of going through, these are my own tiers. Here's kind of how I have broken down the Titans search. Bobby Slowick has his own tier. He is number 1. I believe he is the top target. He is my top target. He would immediately make your offense better, not only by his play calling, which is excellent, as we've seen with the Texans, but also it's not like the Texans were a freaking prized pig when he took over that offense. I mean, this time last year, they were picking second in the draft. Everybody thought they were a dysfunctional organization. They looked like a team with almost no talent. Every team's got a little bit of talent, but they looked like a team that had no talent. And all of a sudden, they're in the divisional round of the playoffs. So don't get it twisted. Don't think the Titans are just such a tire fire that there's no way a guru, a genius, could come in here and fix it the way Bobby Slowick has with DeMeco Ryans and Nick Caserio in Houston. So he gets his own category because I think he is not only my top target, but I think he is their top target. Then there's the second group, what I call the I could live with it group. Ben Johnson, Brian Callahan. They've requested permission on Johnson. They have interviewed Callahan. They can't interview Slowick or Johnson technically until, I believe, after the divisional round of the playoffs. I do think even if their teams are still playing, I think they can interview them. I don't know if they would, but I think they can. So I could live with those guys. I'm not as sold or as excited on either guy as I am Bobby Slowick, but I could live with those two. Then there's the third group. I call it the nobody is talking about it group. And I should not say that nobody is talking about this because Gentry Estes went on Robbie and Retro today and he brought Arthur Smith up. And he asked the question about why has Arthur Smith not been in the discussion at all as a potential candidate for this job. Now, I said right at the very beginning, Arthur should be the safety choice. If you don't get any of the guys you really want, you always know you have Arthur. And it's not something that the league forces upon other owners, but there is maybe at least a little bit of a push sometimes. It is well liked in NFL circles if you hire somebody that's been fired, because it's like, okay, good. Now that owner doesn't have to pay for that guy. It's just a nice little courtesy. People like it. So I wouldn't rule Arthur out. So he's part of the nobody's talking about it group, even though, again, Gentry brought him up today. So we got to say at least one person's talking about him. Pete Carroll, nobody's talking about him. Now, I'm against defensive coaches, but Pete's different. And then Dave Canales, the Tampa offensive coordinator. I'm sorry. Have you seen what he's done with Baker Mayfield? Now, Baker always had talent, and I do think it is not nothing that the Buccaneers this year on offense are significantly healthier than they were last year. You know, Aaron Stinnie, their right guard, who John Robinson cut, who apparently wasn't good enough to play here, but was good enough to start and win the Super Bowl for Tampa Bay, he tore up his knee in a preseason game here last year. They didn't have him. They got rid of Donovan Smith. You know, they've really changed the offensive line. They got healthier. And then I think one thing that is absolutely worth noting is Chris Godwin is back in the year after the ACL, right? So it's like last year Godwin was there, but he wasn't the same Chris Godwin. And now Godwin is off of the ACL and he's playing like the old Chris Godwin. But Baker's always had talent. But I think, again, back-to-back years, Dave Canales, the Tampa offensive coordinator, quarterback coach with Geno Smith 2 years ago, got him a contract in Seattle, much better than people thought. And then this year in Tampa, Baker has been much better than people thought. And Todd Bowles went from on the hot seat to in the divisional round of the playoffs. And I think Tampa is on their way. So that's the third group that nobody's talking about. The fourth group is the group that I would call the no thank you. The I'm sorry, you're probably a great coach, I know, but I just tell you I'm not interested. Mike McDonald, the Ravens defensive coordinator. I don't want a defensive coach. I do not want a defensive coach. Jared, he is a great leader of men. He gets an offensive coordinator. The offensive coordinator develops Will Levis, and the offensive coordinator is gone, and you're back at square one, just like the Eagles are with Jalen Hurts. This is what's going to happen to Jared Goff. And you know I like Jared Goff. But this is what's going to happen. Ben Johnson's going to go get a head coaching job, and it's going to be like Arthur Smith leaving Tannehill. No thank you, Ravens defensive coordinator. Antonio Pierce, the Raiders interim coach. No thank you. Defensive coach. I salute him for the job he did this year. I think he's going to get that job. I think he should get that job. If I owned the Raiders, he would get that job. But again, defensive coach, no thank you. Aaron Glenn, Lions defensive coordinator. They've requested an interview with him. No thank you. Brian Johnson, the Eagles offensive coordinator. No thank you. Again, you heard Troy right there talking about how the Eagles are not the same since Shane Steichen went to Indianapolis. And what's crazy to me is as much love as DeMeco Ryans and C.J. Stroud and Bobby Slowick and all these guys with the Texans get, if Gardner Minshew, who is a backup quarterback, if Gardner Minshew just connects on a simple little pass at the end of that game, Indianapolis is in the playoffs, not Houston. So Steichen is a really good play caller. But Brian Johnson has not been able to pick up the baton. No thank you. And then Thomas Brown, the Panthers offensive coordinator, the Titans have requested permission to interview him. He is a former running backs coach, does come technically from the Sean McVay tree because he was a running backs coach with the Rams. He was the offensive coordinator this year in Carolina. I'm sorry, but no thank you. Now, I don't blame him, just like I'm not a huge Frank Reich guy, But I don't blame Frank Reich for why the Panthers suck so bad this year. I mean, I don't think Vince Lombardi would be able to do anything with that team given what they traded away in order to get Bryce Young, the holes that already existed, the bust of a pick that they had in Ike Ekwonu. Like, I don't think anybody, and then, of course, the crazy-ass owner they have, like, I don't think anybody could do that. But I'm not taking anybody off the Panthers. And he may end up being the greatest coach who ever lived. But they were 32nd in the NFL in offense. Again, it's not that you're a bad coach. It's not that you might not have success. No, thank you. So Bobby Slowick has his own category. And oh my God, am I going to be heartbroken if Bobby Slowick ends up taking a job somewhere else and turns down the Titans. And boy, will I be mad at Rand Carthon if that happens. But then the second group, I can live with Ben Johnson, Brian Callahan. The third group, no one's really talking about Dave Canales, Arthur Smith, or Pete Carroll. And the fourth group, Mike McDaniel, Antonio Pierce, Aaron Glenn, Brian Johnson, Thomas Brown. No, thank you. Again, I'm not interested in a defensive coach, and I don't think that either Johnson or Brown had the kind of seasons that I would say, that is right there, but we need that guy. No, thank you. 615-737-1025. More of your phones. 615-737-1025 here on Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game.
I'll guarantee you Rand Carthon has a list of head coach possibilities. And the one that everybody's talking about, and I asked Bobby Slowick about it yesterday, is they worked together 6 years with the 49ers. Slowick's in his first season as offensive coordinator, play caller. He's done a tremendous job. I personally think he'll come back for one more year the way D'Amico Ryans did when he started to get inquiries, the way Ben Johnson did with Detroit last year, Kevin O'Connell. But it's a natural progression between these two guys. We don't know what they think about each other. We don't know if they had any contact, but they reached out and they wanted permission to talk to Slowick. And I asked Slowick about it yesterday. He said, I'm flattered. I wouldn't be in this position if it wasn't for D'Amico and my players, but I'm focused on the Browns, which is exactly what he should have said. So Washington, he coached there for 3 years under Mike Shanahan with Kyle Shanahan. I think they want a bigger personality, like a Belichick or somebody like that. So Bobby Slowick is what the Titans would need to get the opposite of Vrabel. A younger, although Mike's not old, but just a younger offensive-oriented coach who has a creative offense, and that just usually is the way they go.
John McClain, I want Bobby Slowick. The Titans need to hire Bobby Slowick, period. By the way, let me just say this. I am freaking fired up about these AFC playoffs, the divisional round. Kansas City, Buffalo, in Buffalo. It feels like Kansas City and Buffalo have played 18 times, and every time they play, it seems like it's in Kansas City. So now the game's in Buffalo. Let's see how Mahomes does on the road in the playoffs. You know who's directly responsible, by the way, for Mahomes having never played a road playoff game?
The Titans.
Ryan Tannehill. Because Ryan Tannehill, you're right, Ian, because Ryan Tannehill threw those 2 touchdown passes against the Ravens, knocked them out. Kansas City, the 2 seed, got to host the AFC Championship game. And because Ryan Tannehill threw those 3 interceptions against the Bengals, knocked them out, the 1 seed. Kansas City gets to host the 2 seed. Well, this year, Ryan Tannehill couldn't help out Patrick Mahomes. But I am fired up. The Ravens, that tough team with that defense against, is Lamar going to be able to run the ball against that Texans front? I don't know. Is Lamar going to be able to throw the ball? Is he going to have the time? I don't know. Stroud versus the Ravens? Yes. By the way, apparently Tampa Bay and Detroit is the highest division round ticket ever. Ever. Kinston texts in, our phone line is driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. And Kinston says, would you be higher on Brian Callahan if that meant him bringing his dad in as the offensive line coach, T. Higgins, and left tackle Jonah Williams? Well, I believe Jonah Williams played right tackle last year, and I don't even think Jonah Williams is that good. He has no control over T. Higgins. Like, I know T. Higgins is a free agent, and the Titans have cap space for you cap people out there, and whatever it may be. But the Bengals could franchise tag him. So there's no way he could promise that he'd bring T. Higgins. As far as his dad as the offensive line coach, I don't know. I don't know much about Bill Callahan other than he took over for John Gruden's team. They went to the Super Bowl, and then as soon as that first year was over, it was a disaster. And he wasn't very good at Nebraska either. So, no. But that doesn't mean I'm anti-Callahan. I just don't think Callahan belongs in Bobby Slowick's realm. Well, Bobby Slowick is the number 1 guy around here. So, no, it wouldn't make me feel any better. There's nothing you could tell me that would make me take Slowick out as the number 1 choice for me. Now, I will say this. Yesterday when it was announced that Belichick interviewed with the Falcons, there were a lot of people that were like, oh, my God, that would be huge for the Falcons. And I'm like, is Belichick really that attractive of an option at this point? I want Belichick to go to Dallas, but I don't even know if Dallas is going to come open. But then I worry if Belichick goes to Dallas, then could the Falcons scoop up one of the coaches you want? That's going to do it for us on another snowy day in Nashville. Everybody stay safe on the roads. Everybody take good care of yourself. Be prepared if you have to leave the house. Purdue and Indiana basketball is coming up next. Stillman and Company. We'll see everybody tomorrow at 2.